I love you too, Les. I nearly said anyway. We are live. Today is Monday, the 18th of June, 2018, and we have Patricia, our Patricia.
Hello.
We have a few more people who will be adding themselves, and we have special guest permission to exist. So hello.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on our panel. A name like that, who was that for? Everybody, or because obviously your subject on your channel is narcissism.
Yes.
And is that title for the person who is ill or the person who's being, the other one, the other one? Was it for everyone?
It's really for the latter, the person who has been so affected, so beat down, so exhausted by narcissistic interactions. The title is really meant to be a reminder that you have permission to exist. You don't need it from them. You don't need it from anyone else. You have it. And it's just that reminder that we have every right to be here, every right to exist, and every right to exist in a way that makes you happy and not harmful to others, obviously. But you have a right to be who you are, to think what you think. And oftentimes narcissists try to take that right away. So it's really that reminder to that latter half that you have the permission to exist. You have the right to be here.
So Patricia was asking you a question just before we came on air, because she said, obviously looking at your channel, do you talk about much else? And you said no. So do you want to say the reason why you've stuck on that subject?
Sure. I really believe that narcissism is one of those hidden disorders. We hear it and people automatically think, oh, a narcissist is someone who spent too much time in the mirror, or they take too many selfies, and they're just self-absorbed people and they just think life is all about them. And while that's very true, that tends to be just the tip of the iceberg. And narcissism actually has roots that go far deeper, far more detrimental than most people realize. And so part of what I'm trying to do is uncover those roots. I'm trying to kind of destroy that definition of, oh, it's just a person who takes too many selfies and they're really absorbed in their looks. I'm trying to kind of do away with that definition altogether and really bring to the forefront what narcissism really is, what it does, and the impact that it has on our communities. Eventually, I'll get into some other topics, like I really want to start focusing on the survivors, giving them some encouragement, letting them know that they're still here in spite of great obstacles, and just some different life tips to kind of help them manage their lives and maybe even get away from a narcissist. But what I found is that almost all social ills, almost everything we complain about as a global society kind of roots back to narcissism. Once you fully start to understand what it is, everything, all roads lead to narcissism. And that's a video I should have done months ago. And it's rolling around in my head and I just haven't put it out there yet. So eventually other topics, yes. But for now, the primary focus is raising awareness about this disorder.
Is this something that runs in with how they've made society nowadays? What I mean is, like, there is this thing called subversion, which is to break up families, is to make you feel useless, awful. There is all that going on. Or is this an illness?
I really think that what we're seeing is narcissism had a beginning point. Now, where to point the finger to that origin is it can be difficult. Other people might say it's pretty easy. I think it's slightly difficult. But what has happened is it has snowballed to such an extent that it has now branched out and destroyed the family. And once you destroy the family, from there, you branch out and destroy the individual. And I don't know that was narcissism's original intent, the individuals who were initially affected by it, but it is the end result. So one thing that I often say on my channel is that narcissism is very similar to cancer. So cancer all by itself, the cancer cell by itself is not a problem. And oftentimes the body is able to deal with that 1 or 2 cancer cells. The problem with cancer is that it keeps replicating and it doesn't know when to stop. And it doesn't realize that it's destroying the very host body that it's a part of because it doesn't care. Because its sole focus, cancer's sole focus, is to dominate, control, take over, and have the most, be the winner. So in cancer's desire to be the winner over all the other cells, it not only destroys the other cells nearby it, it eventually destroys the whole organism. And I think that's what's happening. We're now witnessing the destruction of the organism itself.
Wow.
And I could go really deep on that, but
can I just say that Roxanne has joined us. Hi, Roxanne.
Hi, Roxanne. Uh-oh, I think she's muted.
Sorry, I'm just sorting my mic out. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. Sorry about the headphones. It just comes through a bit echoey if I don't use it. But yeah,
That's
really.
Okay. With permission to exist.
Thank you, my darling. Nice to meet you, sweetheart.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Karen, for allowing me to be here. I'm really, really pleased to be a part of this. So my ears are pinned back and I'm well and truthfully listening.
Awesome.
Well, I just wanted to add to that then. What you've just said, permission to exist, these people lie, don't they? And they believe their lies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not to cut you off, sorry, I want to make sure you finish your question.
Yeah, that's it. That's just it. They lie and then they believe their lies.
Absolutely. And then what happens, in my opinion, is, and I probably should state for the record, I'm by no means a medical professional, mental health counselor or therapist, anything like that. I just want to make sure your listeners know I'm just a person who's done a lot of reading, a lot of research. You could call me a social researcher probably, but I just want to make sure everyone knows that. So I will say, in my opinion, a lot, because I just want to make sure everyone knows that it's not something I pulled out of a textbook, if that makes sense. But yes, they create a lie, and then they have to protect that lie. So in the protection of that lie, there's a whole host of other lies, schemes, manipulations, different things that are done to protect the original lie until eventually that original lie becomes truth. And I put truth in quotation marks. And then now you're protecting a truth that was never true to begin with. So it's almost like narcissists have built up the ultimate defense mechanism, one that works so well that even they believe their lies.
Yeah, I just thought about that. It may not be that they believe it, but they've got to protect it.
Absolutely, at all costs, because if it's ever revealed that the thing they were protecting was a lie, it's almost like they've been found out. Then it's almost like the narcissist world collapses. So and a lot of people cannot handle that, but in particular, narcissists cannot handle themselves being found out. So they spend their entire lives in defense of what they're hiding behind the curtain, basically.
Thank you for that. I just want to say that Patricia Steere has joined us. Hello, Patricia Steere.
Hello, everyone, and I'm sorry I'm late. And hello to Permissions to Exist. Your channel, from what I can tell, has been around for a year, and I myself was I don't want to call myself a victim of a narcissist. Let's say ensnared by a narcissist. And your channel was one of the channels that helped me understand what the heck I was entangled with and helped me get out without too much of a smear campaign damaging my reputation. So
congratulations. Thank you. You're so welcome. That's what I do it for. And I love hearing that because it lets me know that we're freeing people out here. Like this message, this information is freeing people. So thank you so much for telling me that. I'm so happy.
Just to explain to Patricia, we're on with Permission to Exist. Are Patricia and Roxanne, Glen so far, and one more person I think is going to join. But I was like, when I was looking at your channel the other day and I was watching the Prince Rupert's drop, I just like, wow, I wondered if you would explain that, because that just explains it all, doesn't it, really?
Absolutely. It really does. And I really love it when examples like that come around, because it really helps to illustrate what I'm talking about. And I love to use examples and analogies on my channel. It's one of my favorite ways to present this information. But essentially, a Prince Rupert's drop is something that occurs. So when they're melting glass for different reasons, If you take some of that molten glass and you drop it into cool water, it forms a structure that looks kind of like a tadpole. So it has a really round head, then kind of a slender body that kind of finishes out in a tail, what they call it. What's so peculiar about these structures is that they can withstand great force to their head, that rounded part. Force is as great as a bullet. If you can get it, hang it up correctly or whatever, and shoot it point blank, it will not shatter. The bullet will not shatter this thing. But if you so much as snip the tail, or sometimes just touching the tail, can cause the whole thing to shatter into a million little pieces, and shatter violently also. That's the other thing about it. So when folks are handling these drops, they have to be very careful, because if they accidentally break the tail, they could get cut up by all of these little pieces of glass that have exploded out from this thing. And it makes me laugh. I have a very dry sense of humor. So things like that, it's funny to me, because it's like, really? You can take a bullet, a point blank range bullet to the face, but if someone messes with your tail, oh, you shatter into a million little pieces. And I'm like, if that's not a narcissist, I don't know what else is. And what makes narcissists, to me, what makes the parallel is that they seem to be able to take so much, head on. Oftentimes they're in positions of great power, and they're able to handle scandals and, insults and all kinds of stuff. But if you tiptoe around to that tail is usually whatever it is they're trying to hide, whatever truth they're trying to keep from getting out is what I consider the tail to be. And if you so much breathe on it, even in the slightest way, you're going to see a complete narcissistic meltdown. They're like landmines in a way. And I would consider those Prince Rupert's drops landmines, because while some people might say, oh, they're not fragile at all, they're actually very strong. Well, you're not that strong if your tail gets touched and you shatter into a million little pieces. So it's the same with the narcissist. And some people, unfortunately, have dealt with narcissists for so long that they know what those tail pieces are, and they just step around them because they don't want to see the narcissistic meltdown. They don't want to experience it. They don't want to get cut up with all those pieces of glass by tripping on that tail. But the thing about narcissists is, especially if you don't know them that well, sometimes you can trip over that tail on accident. And then here comes your narcissistic meltdown.
I really like what you said. And I've heard that narcissists come from a place of a shame-based, they're a shame-based being that occurred somehow different for each narcissist.
Patricia, I was
at
just
a young age
myself, because this world we're in now has been built very much on our egos, right? But
Absolutely.
what it is all this thing is covering up their shame base. They're shamed, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think here, because I get a lot of different comments on the channel, lots of different perspectives. And one perspective that pops up often is people who are kind of sort of in defense of the narcissist because of their history. Oftentimes narcissists have gone through great trauma in their childhood, different things like that. And my answer is always the same. And it probably comes off as cold to some people, but it's really not meant to be cold. And my answer essentially is, just because someone is sick doesn't make them any less dangerous. So just because someone has been traumatized in their youth, had a really bad break or a series of really bad breaks, terrible parents, terrible upbringing, just because all of those things are true, these particular people chose a dangerous and a very destructive way to deal with it. So just because they may have been abused, traumatized in their childhood, doesn't give them the right to then turn around and abuse you and traumatize you. It really doesn't give them that right. And narcissists kind of sit on that trauma as a right. Like, well, as a kid, I was abandoned. So now I'm going to engage in abandoning type behaviors towards you because I was abandoned. And oftentimes there's an awareness there. So that's the other part of it. It's like, how can you be aware, that you're harming someone else, but you excuse it based on your past? So I sum all that up and I make it a summary statement by saying, just because they're sick doesn't make them any less dangerous at all. They're still dangerous people until they find a way to correct that disorder. And I have my own opinions on whether or not it can be corrected. But until they get the help that they need, and until they're able to develop that empathy that we all need to survive with each other, they're still dangerous. So it's like, I'm so sorry for the trauma, but there's a lot of people who go through that same trauma and choose not to be wicked, dangerous people.
There's children who grew up to be successful, loving adults who have lost both parents in a tragic fire, seen family members murdered or raped in front of their eyes, had everything pulled out from under them and still managed to be nice people. Others turn out to be narcissists with much less bad things, maybe even like a distant father, something like that. And they internalize whatever happened to them in such a way that they need to hurt others to make themselves feel better. I was thinking, for a while that narcissists just were people who like to take selfies before I entangled with one. Now I know it's a whole different thing. Hey, I've got a selfie that's showing every time I talk. I occasionally take selfies. I think we all do because we have cell phones and it's social media. But it's something not even that. It's a way for them to exercise demons, whether or not they're real demons from hell, if you want to believe in that, or just this darkness that's in them that's so disgusting. They need to get it out. Do you think they're aware of this poison inside them, or are they unaware?
Ooh, here we go. I love it. Oh, I love it. This is one of the greatest probably debates that I have on the channel. It's my personal opinion that they are 100% aware of who they are and what they do. It's my opinion that they are aware of the darkness, and to some degree they are aware of the damage that it inflicts, and they either don't care or they don't know how to fix it. And I give them those two options because I've read a lot of comments and interacted with a lot of people who told me that their significant other will say, yes, I know I do this and I don't know why I do it. I don't know who this person is. Sometimes they'll tell them, you should run away from me. You should get away from me. You really should. Like they're trying to warn this person that there's this entity, there's this thing with me that I can't control, and it's going to ultimately hurt you, and you should get away from me. So some of them know. I do think the most dangerous type of narcissist is the narcissist who doesn't even realize what they're doing, who totally lacks awareness. But in my opinion, that's rare. It's either rare or the disorder is much deeper than even I give it credit for. But I just don't see how you can get so much feedback into your adult years that when you do this, you make me feel this, or when you do this, this happens.
Is that because they like power?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of narcissists, they want to win at all costs. So them being nice to them is like a loss. When they're kind to you, or when they're gentle with you or tender with you, to them, they interpret that as some kind of loss. And so it makes them very difficult to live with, work with, and be around. But I do think that they know. I really do.
I think so too. I definitely do. Here's a question about narcissism. For me, I was minding my own business and came across one and got in a relationship and got out very quickly, thank goodness, with not too much damage. But other people stay in marriages for a very, very, very long time, or they have to be in a workplace and they can't really quit because it's their livelihood and their boss or a coworker is one. What is it about narcissists that, well, they're very appealing because they have so much charisma, but is there something wounded in narcissists' victims? I hate the word victim, but is there something in narcissist victims that draws narcissists to us that we can strengthen so it never happens again?
Sure, absolutely. I definitely think so. I think it's two things. One, I'll start with what I think is the easier one, which is, excuse me, it's a gross, and I think I'm going to butcher this word. It's a gross naivete. I think that's how you say it. I think it's naivete, but it's a gross state of being naive. I'll put it that way. And it comes from a bubble that was essentially created by our parents in an effort to kind of protect us and shield us from the real world, or what I would say, the realities of the world, what the world can be sometimes. And I think some of our parents overprotected us to the point where they didn't teach us that there were wolves in the woods. So it's like, okay, darling, go out, walk through the woods to get where you're going, and just be careful. Whereas other people said, walk through the woods, be careful, and look out for the wolves. Here's what the wolves look like. Here's what they sound like. This is what you should say. This is what you should do should you encounter a wolf. But if you don't encounter any wolves, good for you. That makes me happy. But here's how to equip yourself just in case the wolves are there. Whereas, sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But basically, so that's group one. Group one is the group of people who are so naive, grew up in great neighborhoods, have never really had anything happen to them, like anything tragic or traumatic. So they get out here and into the reality of what the world can be, and they're totally unprepared to deal with the wolves that do exist. It's almost like we don't want to believe that they're there because we can't process how another person could treat somebody that way. It's not something that we can process. So that's group one. Group two, I do believe, are those, casualties is no better. I was going to say casualties instead of victims, but there's really no other way to put it. Those who have been impacted early in youth by more than likely narcissistic parents or narcissistic siblings. And their reaction, instead of becoming a narcissist themselves, is they become people pleasers to their own detriment. So they always, this second group has a tendency to blame themselves for everything. So if something's not going right, it's something that they did. If the family's fighting, they need to fix it. Here's one way that I was thinking about this today. Those kids that you hear say, I want to grow up and become a fill in the blank so I can take care of my family. That is so backwards. That's backwards. Like, a child's job is not to grow up and find out how to take care of the family. And I know that probably sounds terrible, but really hear what I'm saying, which is that child at a young age has determined something's wrong with the family, and I'm the one that needs to fix it. Me, my 12 or 13 or 14-year-old self, needs to go to school, go to college, graduate, get a good job so I can take care of my family. That's backwards. It's not supposed to be that way. So I just use that as an example to say that I think group one is just the group that's just grossly naive, has no idea what's out there. Group two is the group who kind of knows what's out there and feels like it's their job to fix it. And so it's almost like no one ever told them, it's not your job to fix the family. That's the adult's job. Your job is to grow up, self-actualize. And if out of the kindness of your heart, you want to help the family, which a lot of people do, of course, so be it, but that's not your duty. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we've got thousands of hours of parental tapes running around our head.
Oh, you're echoing, Karen.
Yeah, I am suddenly. Oh, is it gone now?
Kind of, yes.
It's gone.
Yes.
Yeah. So just to explain, Bling Bling's joined us. Hi, Bling Bling. She's there on the end of the panel. There she is.
Hey, everyone. How are you?
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
I just wanted to turn on my camera to show my new t-shirt. I ordered, have to stand up. Hold on. You can see.
Oh, I know where you got it from. David Weiss, CITRH.
Yes, I did. I saw them and I'm like, oh, I love that. So I ordered. It took a while to come here. I'd asked him the other day, where is it? But yeah, it came today. So I just wanted to show you. So I'm going to turn off my camera, I think, because I think it works better.
Yeah, mine too today. I've got bad internet for some weird reason. That comes from the flatearthpodcast.com. If anybody wants one of those, it spells out hoax. So,
yeah. They were.
Anyway, just to explain to Bling Bling, you're on the panel with Roxanne, Glen, our Patricia, Steere, and Permission to Exist. And we're talking about narcissism today.
Yes. Hi there. What a great topic.
Yeah.
Boy.
Well,
we all know a few.
Haven't we, ladies?
Oh, yeah. We have.
We sure have.
Can
I just say, is it a bit like when you wake up, you've got to have learnt who you are. And then when you get there, you get to a higher consciousness where we don't want to treat each other like that anymore. Because if you know who you are and what life's like, these people don't care.
They don't care at all. They have such a disregard. Someone put it really great the other day, and I meant to save the article, but basically what they were saying is they just don't play by the rules of humanity. And I've alluded to this in other videos before, where I was basically saying that narcissists, or excuse me, human beings, you know, we put a formula to everything else. We know how to cook. We follow a recipe. We know how cars work. We've got math and different calculations. So we have all these other systems in place for life. But when it comes to human beings, it's almost like we take our hands off and go, well, whatever happens, happens. It's just organic, as if human beings don't have a set of rules that make humans function well. And it's almost like some of those rules are inborn. A few have to be taught as you get older. But for the most part, you kind of know when you're doing something right and something wrong. Narcissists have completely disregarded all the rules as it pertains to how to treat a human being, how to handle another human life. It's like they don't care, or if they do care, they just feel like their situation matters more, their needs matter more. They come first, and it just doesn't work. And it proves itself as not working over and over and over again. But no amount of proof can make a narcissist change course. And to me, that's part of what makes them so dangerous, is that you cannot, and I just did a video recently called Words Don't Work with Narcissists. There is no combination of words, a flip chart. You can't do a PowerPoint presentation, get out a whiteboard marker and a whiteboard. You can't whiteboard it for them. There's nothing you can do to get through to them, to show them what you're doing is not only affecting your life negatively, it's affecting your life and everybody else's. There's nothing you can say or do. And that, to me, that's what makes them so dangerous and what really drains the life out of the people who work with them and deal with them.
Can I ask you something? Is this something that actually really happens when these people are small? Because I myself got quite into psychology, and you know, by the age of 3, a child has worked out what's going to happen in its life and usually lives its life just like that 3-year-old. And I mean, I read this book called I'm Okay, You're Okay. But someone who's not feeling okay, which is this process of this child, they go, I'm not okay, but you're okay. Or I'm not okay, you're not okay. I'm okay, but you're not okay. But it should be I'm okay, you're okay. So they're always living in one of those stances. Either they're okay or you're not okay, or that no one's okay. So how can those people go forward if they're never going to believe anything anybody else says in the first place? Because they were 3 years old and that's how they run their life now.
You know, I feel like one of the most amazing things about them is that they actually do live to be as old as they do sometimes. I don't know how they've been able to function up until this point, playing by their particular rule system.
I'm surprised no one kills them. They're so horrible.
No, seriously, like, it's a wonder that they make it to the ages that they do, because they really do put themselves in harm's way with the way they treat other people. And then just the way they live their lives is almost like narcissists have to take things to the extreme in order for any type of change to take place. And that change is usually not initiated by them. It's usually initiated by the law or by the rules that govern nature. So, you know, eventually, if they keep speeding at 100 miles per hour drunk, they might make it home a few times doing that. But if they just keep it up, eventually they're going to meet that tree or that pole. So it's almost like life itself has to stop them, or the law stops them. So the prisons are filled to the brim with narcissists, people who just absolutely refuse to play by the rules. And I'm not saying that all the rules that are laid out for citizens are good ones. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but some of the rules are helpful. You know, some rules I think are actually pretty useful.
Do you think a lot of these people are dominators as well?
I think they are. But I do go back and forth with this, because I've also found that a lot of narcissists, in all of their insanity, actually have really low self-esteem. Really low self-esteem.
They're always putting their narcissism out on everyone else. They're not internalizing it and keeping it there, are they really? They're having to make sure that everybody else knows, but they're always blaming everybody else for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything they do is triggered or, generated by someone else. I did a video probably a year or so ago. It was written by the Harvard Business Review, this article, and it was basically talking to employees, telling them how to deal with what they call social dominance orientation, or SDO, in their bosses. And essentially they were telling the employees, well, if your boss is stealing credit for your work and belittling you in front of your coworkers, that you should find a way to boost up their self-esteem. That you should figure out how to, make them feel good or make them share the credit in a project. In other words, they were coaching employees on how to be good victims and how to cater to and tiptoe around this individual who has clearly demonstrated that they're not well. So it's just, sorry, I don't know how I got off on that, but the society is very protective.
Is it the fact that these people don't love themselves at all?
You know what? I don't think it's so much they don't love themselves as I do wonder sometimes if they feel anything at all. So I don't know if they can't love themselves, if they even know what love feels like, to know what they're missing, if that makes sense. I think they feel very empty. I think I was going to do another video I need to put out called Narcissist Senses Seem to Be Dulled. And I mean that. Their senses in every way, their sense of touch, smell, sight, taste, they seem to have dulled senses to me. And I say that because I've been in a room with narcissists where it'll be really hot or really cold. They're not affected by it at all. I was going to go off down a deep rabbit hole, but it's almost like they're lizards, but we'll get into that another day. But they don't feel extreme temperature changes. They don't. Hot, cold. They don't seem to notice things, until other people point it out to them and they're like, oh, wow, it is filthy in here. So it's like they're almost running on autopilot. So whether or not they love themselves is hard for me to say, because I don't know that they can actually even feel love.
Sexually, I've heard and experienced that they have sex on you, not with you, as if you're a toy or a blow-up doll, men or women.
Interesting. On you and not with you. Yes, 100%. Which to me would enable them to do some really perverse things, because they don't even really see it as something perverse, because they don't really see you as a you. You're an object, essentially. There's a lot of issues with these folks, which is why we bring this out. The roots go so deep and they branch out into so many different directions. So many.
Can we talk a little bit about the after effects of tangling with a narcissist? If you manage to get free or you're discarded by them, and then in some way they feel the need to tarnish your reputation before you can tell anybody about what really happened. It's called the smear campaign. And since we've got social media nowadays, a smear campaign can have wide-ranging issues for anybody who's the victim of a narcissist.
Absolutely. I think initially, once a person separates from a narcissist, it's so hard to not internalize everything, to not feel like it was completely your fault, because the narcissist is going to work overtime to make you understand that it was your fault. They have a lot of trouble with ownership and accountability and seeing their role in a problem. So I think the first thing that we tend to do is we internalize it. We blame ourselves. I think we go through extreme grief, whereas I don't believe the narcissist is going through grief at all. I think they're going through more of an irritation at the loss of their supply, but they're not grieving the loss, whereas you're grieving the loss. The saddest part, and probably one of the most or the least encouraging pieces of this, is that narcissists have taken a grip and taking a stranglehold on society at large, that oftentimes people are going to side with them. They're going to take their side. They're not going to think critically. They're not going to examine all corners of an issue. Oftentimes you'll see this, a family will split up and you'll hear of some abuse and people will say, well, he or she was such a nice person. They were awesome. They were a community member. They attended the church. really stand up guy or stand up woman. What do you mean? Like, so narcissists have the ability to snow everybody around them, because they really don't get to interact with those people on a deeper level. And keep in mind that narcissists have targets. So they don't exercise. And going back to an earlier question, whether or not they know, I believe they know also because of this reason, because they can pick and choose who they do this to. So it's one thing if they just treat everyone with the same broad stroke, then they're truly mentally ill, because they don't even have the ability to differentiate between people. But narcissists seem to seek out and select certain targets, dump all of these bad behaviors on them, but they hold those bad behaviors back from the people that they want to impress or the people that they want to blind to their behaviors. And so that way, when the relationship does finally end and it comes out what happened, it's, wow, no, there's no way. He's such a nice person. He helped me move, or she helped me pay a bill, or what do you mean? So it's almost like no one else around you believes you or believes what happened or believes that this person could be this way. And so it makes it that much more isolating for you, the person. My recommendation always is just to kind of know that that's going to happen, and don't ever let your truth be altered. So that's why I always recommend taking notes for yourself, taking notes, keeping some sort of journal, because what will happen is as you get further and further away from the incident, if you're continuously exposed to these contradictory ideas, contradictory to what you know to be true and what you know happened, if you don't have something you can go back and read to remind yourself why you left, or remind yourself why you feel this way about this person, you'll start to forget, and then you'll start to get pulled into that gaslighting. And then here goes the self-esteem again. Because now you think, well, it really must be me. Maybe I didn't remember it correctly. And the truth is you do remember it correctly, but their job is to make you feel like you didn't. Or like, and
they'll come back for you if you don't remember what they did to you. They'll come back for you because they see you as something that they can feed off psychically. And they'll come back for you either physically to try to get you involved in a relationship again, or they'll come back with social media in order to continue to try to bury your reputation, to try to get you to come and comment, try to get you to maybe, let's just say YouTube, make a video, try to get you to speak out in the office, try to stir you up so you crack and then you look crazy, and then they can point their finger at you and say, look, obviously this person's crazy and I'm not. It's weird. It's so weird.
And well, it's a good thing, Patricia, that you knew that game and you never played into it at all. So I'll give you a lot of credit for that. Thank you. Pretty amazing. Most women, and it's the crazy making behavior that they do to you, which it would be nothing wrong with any woman to want to retaliate back and defend themselves and say, hey, wait a minute, these things are not true. But then the narcissist will turn that around again and make you look like you are the crazy one. It's amazing how they can manipulate people like they do. Yeah. I know for myself, I haven't had a lot of experience with narcissistic men, but I've had plenty of experience with histrionic women. And maybe we can talk about that in a bit too, once we get through this part. Sure. Because that's a whole nother thing, is histrionic personality disorder. And it's mostly in women. I think, is it 1 out of 3 men? Is that the statistic for narcissism? Am I quoting that right? I read a lot about it at one point and then I sort of gave it up. But there's like 200,000 cases in America every year of histrionic women being diagnosed. Never mind the ones that are not being diagnosed. But it's a horrible, horrible friendship. If you ever get yourself involved with a woman like this, once you recognize it, you need to run for the hills because they suck your soul out of your body. But I don't mean to change the topic. Keep on with the narcissistic stuff you're talking about. And like I said, we can bring up the histrionic part after, because I find that part quite fascinating because they're.
Well, I was going to agree with you a bit on there that I think they try to mentally kill you. That's what they try and do, especially if it's more personal.
In fact, Permission to Exist, you had a video on that, kind of like that they try to kill you with words or something, right?
Absolutely. I've said before that most narcissists are really murderers. They're just cowards. They're murderers who don't have the courage to actually kill. So they're trying to kill you in other ways. They're trying to kill your spirit, your self-esteem, your confidence, your courage, your will to live, your belief that you should even be here. They're trying to kill all of that because they don't have the courage to physically kill you. And mainly because they would never want that that bad stigma attached to them. Oh, he or she is a murderer. They would never want that to sour their good name. So they kill you in other ways in order to preserve their good name and get rid of you in a way.
Can I just say something? I just want to say I love you, Patricia Steere. She's had to put up with rather a lot of stuff, and really love you for staying and keeping going. Wants to bring a tear to my eye right now with the things that she's had to put up with.
Real talk, Karen. Well said. Well said.
We all love you,
my
Patricia.
darling. Big love to you, Patricia.
We all love you. And we all know you are 100% a woman and beautiful inside and out. And we're women, so we know who women are. So
me too. I'm a woman too, despite what you heard, despite what some people have been saying.
The difference with Patricia is she's a lady. I'm more of a tomboy. I like jeans and boots and ball caps, and that's what I do. That's how I roll. Patricia wears big hats and dresses and fancy shoes, and I can't be bothered with all those things anymore. I used to when I was a hairstylist and in a really high-end salon, but as I've gotten older, I've just totally broke off from that, and I'm just a jeans girl. But I do admire the way Patricia dresses. She's such a fashionista, like completely, and it's no wonder since she had a clothing store,
I think
she's so into it.
The narcissist I entangled with attacked my femininity because I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but it is something that's part of me. And what they do when they do a smear campaign is try to find the thing about you that either you're insecure about, weak in, or something that you're proud of, and trash
part
that.
of you.
Yeah,
Sure.
So.
Absolutely.
It's so sad. But as of recent, I've been saying to myself, because I'm always quitting a job, like always. And I don't encourage that out of my subscribers because everyone doesn't necessarily have the tools in place to survive the interim between jobs. So I don't encourage that a lot, but I'm always leaving a job because of this. And I said to myself, I need to stop saying what makes me so happy on these jobs. And it's sad that we've gotten to this place. But what I found is as soon as I make the mistake of saying, if they're like, oh, we might have you travel to this certain state. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that state. Next thing I know, I'm never allowed to go there. I have to go everywhere, but I'm never allowed to go to that one state that I said I love going there, right? Or it's sad because it starts to make you a person you don't want to be. So I'm not a person who always has to sit down and plot and plan out what she's going to say. But what I've learned, at least with me, is that I cannot be so forthcoming. And that's my natural nature. My nature is just to speak honestly and speak openly about what I'm thinking, feeling, with tact, of course, and with diplomacy. But it's not my nature to filter everything. So I've learned that I have to start filtering with these people and maybe even reverse it. So if they're like, oh, we have all these different places you can travel, I need to proclaim the place that I least want to go. Like, oh man, I love that. I love that place. It's awesome.
Fargo, North Dakota.
There you go.
You love it.
Yeah.
Your dream.
I'll never get to go. I'll never get to go to the place that I said that I loved. You know what I mean? But I'll have to go everywhere else, which hopefully is somewhere I actually want to go. And it's exhausting to me to have to play those types of games. But it's so true. They find that one thing that gives you pride or gives you a source of pride, and they attack it because they know that it makes you happy.
They're just making life so hard.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so it's like you have to become almost a defensive player in the sense of you're cautious with what you share. You're cautious with what you express joy about or a pride about. But even when you don't express it, the narcissist sometimes will just pick something that irritates them about you. And they just work on actively breaking that down and destroying it. And then
I
it
think
makes
they're only happy when you're looking at the floor.
abs.
Wow, good. That's a
You
good
know,
one.
I'm sorry I came to the party late here. And your first name, Permission to Exist. Do you go by your first name or you just go
Just goes
by
by permission to exist right now.
permission? Okay, all right, that's fine. You know, I'm sorry. Are you a flat earther? I'm like I said, I'm coming in late. Maybe those questions were asked.
We're not talking about that today.
No, that's okay. It's just that because I didn't know about your channel, so since we've been talking, I've Googled it and I've subbed you because wow, you have a long history of a lot of videos here. It's amazing. You must have really been impacted by this problem in your life in a strong personal way for you to create so many videos about it. And my heart goes out to that. As a survivor to a different form of abuse, I know what that journey is like for healing. So this was very therapeutic, obviously, for you to make all of these videos. And I think that's really wonderful. And obviously you have gotten a lot better and stronger inside of yourself from all of this. So that's really wonderful.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's the individuals who come to the channel and watch and participate. I need to do a video on this also. I have a long list, but just a video thanking my viewers and subscribers because they don't realize how much they've lifted me and how much they've helped me, how many laughs that they've given me and pulled me out of dark places sometimes. So it's like, as much as they're thankful to me, I'm more thankful to you guys because honestly, it's been a tremendous blessing to me, this channel. And I feel like it's helped a lot of people and you all have helped me as well. And I really mean that. So thank you. And then to answer your question, even though we're not going into that, I actually am a flat earther, but we won't go into that in the broadcast.
Yay!
Nice.
That's fine with me. We don't have to talk about that. I was just curious. I don't know why I didn't have your channel, but I'm sure glad that I have it now. I'm going to spend a lot of time watching your videos because this is a very fascinating topic. And obviously you've done a ton of research on it. So that's pretty amazing.
Permission to Exist, she's already been talking about the Prince Rupert drops, which that just, to me, just summed it all up. That was just the most amazing way of putting it.
Absolutely. And just a quick summary on that, Bling Bling is the Prince Rupert drop is just a glass structure formed when hot molten glass falls into cool water, and it ends up looking like a tadpole. And for whatever reason, physically, it can take a lot of stress to the face, that round bulb part. But if you even breathe on the tail, the whole thing will shatter into a million little pieces. And
isn't that interesting?
Oh, it's so fascinating. And it just speaks to,
what's it called again? What do you call that again?
Prince Rupert drops, RUPERT.
On her channel.
Okay. I'll find that then. Wow. This is very interesting information. Almost looks like a sperm.
Yes.
How weird is that?
Can I just say something? Can you hear me?
Patricia!
Yes, Patricia.
Patricia!
Hello, Bling Bling. Hello, Roxanne.
Hi, darling.
Hello, Patricia. I just wanted to say, you were saying about the Prince Rupert drops. If most narcissistic people are men, who'd ever want to touch their tail anyway?
Well, you know, it's funny. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't want it, since it's a bunch of women on this panel, I don't want any men who are listening to think we're male bashing. There are women who are narcissists as well. It's mostly men, but there are women who are narcissists as well. And, you know, the MGTOW or MGTOW movement, MGTOW, men going their own way, that I believe is contributing to more narcissism in younger people when it comes to men. And I think this movement, the idea of men going their own way, hey, that's fine. Don't want to get married, don't want to have children, don't want to have a steady woman in their life, cool. But to create a movement that almost seems very aggressive against females, to use them and abuse them sexually and then leave, or even impregnate them and then leave and don't take care of the children, that little tiny section of the MGTOW movement, I think, is pure narcissism.
Oh, 100%. And honestly, I feel like I need to, a lot of what I struggle with is that it's like there are certain topics I need to go deep into, and this is one of them. It's the backlash that it kicks up from going into those topics from these narcissistic males who are members of these groups, that I'm just not mentally or emotionally prepared to handle the kickback just yet. But it's coming, because you're absolutely correct. MGTOW, the pickup artist, PUA, there's a whole bunch of other subsets. It has turned into a violent, aggressive, misogynistic war against women. And it's so detrimental. It's been so detrimental across all races of women, which is very interesting, all age brackets of women. So it's no longer just isolated. It has spread, and its roots are narcissistic, because essentially, and this is all can all be proven just by combing through the comment section on one of my videos on this topic, they really want to roll it back to a place where men were the only ones working, women were in the house. A lot of them want to repeal our right to vote, and I'm not kidding. That is written, it is documented on my channel in the comments. They don't want us to vote anymore. They really believe in their heart of hearts that the fall of society is because the women fell. And they really believe that women are the reason society is in the shape that it's in today. They fault women for everything. There's another group you all may have heard of that has spawned out of this called the incels, INCELS. And that stands for the involuntarily celibates. So in other words, I'm celibate not by choice. I'm celibate because women won't sleep with me. And this is what they say. So they believe that because women won't freely give them sex, because in their mind, and I'm not making this up, in their minds, all women are sluts, all women are whores. We have all these options, sexual options that we can pick from anytime. So since you're already a slut and a whore, what's the big deal about having sex with me? I mean, you're not a virgin, so what's the big deal about having sex with me? And they really believe this. They have internalized this as a mantra. And these incels, I don't know if you all heard of, in Vancouver, Canada, a gentleman, his last name was Manassian. He rammed a crowd of women because of this. So he was like punishing what they call Stacy's. So in their minds, there are Chads and Stacy's. Chads are the guys who are just handsome and attractive, and women just fawn and throw themselves at their feet because they're handsome and attractive. Stacy's are the girls who are the exact same, except they're women. They're beautiful, they can get whatever they want in life, and they hate Chads and they hate Stacy's. So this guy, his goal was to basically, they're trying to launch some sort of revolt or rebellion. And it's all rooted in the narcissistic belief that women have to give me their bodies because I asked for it. Because I've asked you and I asked you nicely, you should just give it up. What's the big deal? Like, you've already had sex before, so it's not like you're a virgin, so you might as well sleep with me. And they feel rejected. They feel that, all women are just chasing after their money. And what I want to say so bad is, what money, honey? What money? Anyway, but they feel like all women, it's sick. And it's honestly becoming a public health hazard, to the point where you've got these young men just brooding in their rooms behind their computers. They're feeding off of all of this incorrect information. They're developing ideas about society and women and life at large that's actually impacting society, because a lot of these guys will go on to become managers and leaders in somebody's company. And imagine a person being over a group of people, how he'll treat women if he holds these internal beliefs about women. It's really bad. It's gotten really bad.
I've had male bosses who were amazing, and I've had male bosses who seemed to target me when I was in radio because I was the only woman. And I could only attribute it to that. I wouldn't consider myself a feminist. I just believe we're all equal, but we all are different. But this particular, I don't know if this was a narcissist. It was just like a bad, jerky guy, probably. But he would definitely target me because I was a woman and believed in radio. Well, it's only guys who work here, and we don't want a woman here. And I would imagine that there's also women who do that same thing with men. They are man haters, you know, and treat men with disdain too. So I just want everyone who's listening to know that we are not bashing on men at all here. We love men. We just hate narcissists.
Absolutely. And I always find I have to differentiate, and I always have to say and clarify who I'm talking to, because just like you were saying earlier, if a man decides he doesn't want to get married and doesn't want to have kids and wants to do his own thing with his life, I think that is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think, and now I'm getting ready to kind of go off on another tangent, but I'll bring it back. I honestly feel like a lot of the reason society is aching right now is because so many people never took the time to think through what they needed in their life, what they wanted for their life. They just kind of followed lockstep what society said to do. And as a result, a lot of people just chose mates because they felt like it was time to get married. Not because this mate would be good for your life, not because you love them, but, well, I'm XYZ age, so it's time for me to get married, and you're sitting right there. So let's do it, you know? And so like people have gone into marriage and family blindly, not realizing the amount of money it takes to support a family, and especially once children arrive, the day-to-day grind of bills, paying mortgage, paying rent, getting food on the table, that's hard for two people. So then when you add in kids, it creates a whole nother layer of complexity. Then you add in what has become the materialistic way, especially here in America, consumer-driven society, where every month just about we're spending money on something. New Year's, then we have Valentine's Day, then I think St. Patrick's Day, then I think we get a break, then it's Mother's Day, Father's Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, July 4th, Independence Day, then back to school, then it's Thanksgiving, then it's Christmas, and then it's time to do it all over again. And don't forget all the birthdays that are sprinkled in between. So it's like, I feel like a lot of what these men are rebelling against, the ones who are taking it too far, they're rebelling against that consumer-driven society where every time you look up, you're spending money on something extraneous, a birthday gift, an anniversary gift, a holiday, and the expectation that they do that. And then if they don't do that, they're not good men, they're not good providers. So I feel like a lot of that is a rebellion against that. And I actually agree. And when I'm trying to talk and reason with these guys, I'm trying to get them to see that there's actually a lot of things that we agree on. There's a lot of things that we agree on. I think that we need to pause as a society and say, what are we doing? What are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to each other? You know what I mean? Like the greed has reached an all-time high, and it's causing people's bottoms to fall out. But instead of them looking at the greater system of what's causing this, they've chosen their villain, and they're going in full force on who they believe their villain is. And so as long as they have that villain, which is the woman, it's like they'll never be able to see through and see clearly to what's actually happening to all of us. You've got people out here in the States with degrees, advanced degrees, who are homeless because the cities that they live in have become so expensive and gotten so expensive to live in, they can't even afford to live there anymore. And they have 6-figure jobs and 2 degrees. So you have to at some point say, what is causing this? What's driving this? And how can we stop it? So I'll come off that tangent. I'll back up off that for a second.
No, I was with you on that tangent completely. So I got a lot out of it. Do you think that the way society is going, it's creating more narcissism in males and females, society in general, not just MGTOW. I just mean the way our society is. Not really selfie culture, but just the fact that we are more isolated than ever before and relying more upon connecting through social media and other things that might cause more narcissism.
Absolutely. So I'll kind of back up a little bit to answer your question. I think that to some degree, it is possible for anyone to develop severe narcissism. I think a lot of it is checked in childhood, via civics, learning about good citizenship, as they used to call it when I was little, learning you don't do that, you do this. Any type of religion a parent might have their child in. some of it has to be checked. And then it's like, oh, wow, that is the wrong thing to do. Let me not do that. And then you're fine the rest of your life. So I say that to answer your question, which is society creating more narcissists? Absolutely, 100% yes. And here's why I think that. So I would estimate that those of us on the call have had an opportunity to see what society was like to some degree when it was sort of kind of working. And that could be up for debate. I don't know. All I know is that when I was little, I believed that I saw what I consider to be a functional society. My parents were married. My friends' parents were married. Even the kids I went to school with, like everyone had a mom and a dad. Everyone pretty much grew up in reasonable neighborhoods. You know what I mean? We did what we were supposed to do. We went to school, we got our grades, we graduated, we did those things. And then it seems like everything fell apart around 2000, 2001. But I say all that to say, I still remember what a functional society, or at least what my childlike mind told me was functional. Maybe it never was, but it's possible. But I remember what it used to look like, what people being good to each other used to look like. I remember the races getting along. And again, I don't know if that was a childhood naivete or if I just hadn't lived long enough, but I remember the races getting along. Friends of all cultures and colors just being friends because they like the person. So it seems that society. Oh, absolutely. And it's sad to me because, again, I remember that time frame. So going back to your question, I think what social media has done is it has erased that. It's not that it erased the memory, it's that it never really put it out there. So kids born today, if they don't have those examples that we had from the past to pull from, all they really have is the TV, the internet. And like I've
done really well in this program, which they've done, because they've broken people down. They've done it. They've already done it because the children now are deciding who they're going to be for the rest of their life by the age of 3.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Which is crazy to me. There's a 15-year-old girl that I follow because she was my roommate's daughter. And my roommate from college, she unfortunately passed away in a very tragic accident. So I kind of always kept an eye on this girl as she's been growing up. I read what she posts online and I think to myself, good Lord, she's going through, or emotionally, she's experiencing 30-year-old and 40-year-old problems. And I'm sure her mother passing away has a lot to do with that. But most of the time she's talking about like dating issues and relationship issues. And I'm thinking to myself, if her coping skills are already this low at this age, and they're already going through these types of issues, I don't know what they're going to do when they get into their 20s and 30s, because the internet offered no coping mechanism for anyone. It just puts out anything and lets the chips fall where they may. And kids now, 10 years ago, the internet was active. So they don't, what I'm trying to say is that they don't have any social reference that doesn't include the internet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They have nothing to reference, nothing to fall back on. Everything that they can fall back on are like reality TV shows or, something that happened on Instagram. They don't have any other content. Oh, absolutely. And the programming, you said?
Yeah, it's all programming, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's worked so well that it's insane how well that it's worked. Because so many of these children are in despair. They've done studies to show that our preteens and our young adults are deeply depressed. They don't have a lot of hope for the future. And that's just sad because I remember having hope for the future at a young age. And it's almost like they can see everything now, and what they see they don't like, and they're in deep despair.
Can I say that in a way, I think that things have got worse, and I agree with you on that. But as a society, we've gone through a lot of touching children for many, many, many years. That's not nice, is it?
When you say touching, what do you mean?
Well, it's actually touching children.
Right.
A lot of families have this going on, or people are doing it. So we've come from a society that's been doing that to the children So that's not very nice either, is it?
It's not. And it's our society is hypersexualized also. And kids are getting exposed to things that they shouldn't see or shouldn't know at very young ages, and things that they can go find on their own now. Before, you at least had to sneak into your parents' closet to see those kinds of things. But now all they need is just free access to the internet and they can see anything. But there's a lot of abuse going on in households. But narcissism holds people in check. So if the abuser is a narcissist, what they're going to instill in that child is what goes on in this house stays in this house. It's nobody else's business what goes on in this house. You see? You know,
So being a narcissist then is something that is with you from a child then. It's not something you go, oh, 18, ding, I'm a narcissist. It really, you've got traits and things from a child all the way through. People just don't notice it.
I think that's possible. However, I've said this on a video before. I think something happens around the age of 19. I don't know what it is, but something
triggers it, you mean? It's sitting there subconsciously and then it gets triggered.
Correct. Because I have seen so many people flip at that age. It's to me, it's worthy of further study. I've seen a female friend of mine at age 19. It's like her narcissism flipped on. My college ex, who I reference quite often because he was a really heavy contributor to all of this. I saw his switch flip on at 19. So when he and I met, we were both 18. We dated for about a year. He turned 19, and then it's like a completely different person replaced him. Completely different. I have a couple theories on that. One of those theories is when we're children and we're still living with our parents, everyone's on the same playing field. No one has a job. No one has a car. No one has their own place. No one has a career. We're all just kids living off our parents, basically. Excuse me. But what happens once we turn 18, and then I guess 19 is when it really cements, we start to choose our life paths. And those of us who have those seeds of narcissism that never got watered until then, it's almost like they recognize, uh-oh, the playing field is changing now. He or she is getting ready to major in blank, or he or she just got a job doing XYZ. You know, uh-oh, their future looks bright. And it's almost like it was fine as long as we were all on the same level. But as soon as the level differentiation started to show up, is almost like when the narcissism kicks on. So in other words, it's like they had nothing to compete with up until that point. Nothing, because what can you compete with when your parents, everyone's parents are pretty much on the same level, same class, basically. There's nothing to compete with yet, because everything that you are is because of your parents up until that point, for the most part. Does that make sense?
Yep, I am. Yeah.
So I do think it's there. And again, I kind of waffle on, do we all have those seeds and they just have to be activated, or are some of us just born with it and others are not? But at any rate, I have seen it come on at age 19. I don't know what it is about 19, but 19 does it.
Done with puberty. I think maybe the brain is fully formed. I don't know anything about that because the narcissist that I was involved with was, well into their 40s, but I don't know what they were like as a child. So no idea really. In general, for those of us who have been victims of a narcissist, do you find that because we have something in us that attracted the narcissist, that we have to be on our guard to make sure all other people that come across our path aren't narcissists, and watch out more than ever before?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that we are the most easily taken in, unfortunately, because we know what it feels like to be treated like we're nothing. We know what it feels like to be treated like absolute trash. And the last thing we would ever want to do is make someone else feel that way. And so we work overtime to make sure that we're not making someone else feel the way we've been made to feel. And those of us, or those who have ill intentions towards us, see that and they capitalize on it. The one beautiful thing about narcissists, if there is anything beautiful, is that they are extremely consistent. And once you pick up on their patterns, they're extremely predictable. So I think that it's very easy. It's easy for me now because I've studied it so much. The hardest part, though, is that it sounds awful, but your life might be a little bit lonely for a while, because until we can figure out how to shut off that radar almost that attracts them, we keep attracting them. And then it's like, as soon as you recognize who that person is, I highly recommend just terminating contact as much as you're able to prevent it from happening again. And so it's kind of hard, because a lot of times we want to say that we have friends. We want to say that we have people around us that care about us. But if we're honest and we really took a strong inventory, how many of those folks actually really do care about you and love you? So I say that to say that, yes, we have to be more on guard than the average person and more comfortable with terminating contact as soon as we realize who that person is, because oftentimes they will show it quickly, especially if they think that you don't see it. They will show their true colors really quickly. And I'll give you a perfect example. Met a very handsome guy out at the grocery store, just a random place. He was cute. He thought I was cute. I'm single. He's single, I guess. And so we exchanged phone numbers. He immediately texts and he's like, hey, so do you want to hang out? And I'm like, yeah, sure. That sounds like fun. He goes, great. I can come over to your place or you can come to mine. Pause, time out. Like, the presumption. I was so turned off by the presumption, but for me now it's like, oh, here's a narcissist. Like, the fact that you thought that you could come to my house or that I would come to yours after I literally just met you an hour ago. And then after I said, well, no, I'd really like to do something public with you. Like, we can go get drinks or something like that. Oh, well, I'm not really dressed for drinks. Like, all the excuses start rolling out. And the more that I stood my ground and said, I'm not coming to your house and you're not coming to mine, the more
that sounded like he wanted something else.
Absolutely. And then he went into this long diatribe of, you need to live a little more.
Oh no, loosen up, that kind of thing. Lighten up.
Live life. I got to give y'all this one-liner because I thought this was good. I thought, wow, he's been working on this one a long time. He goes, when you're 80 years old in the nursing home, reflecting on your life, do you think you'll regret coming over to my house tonight when you're 80? And I was like, wow, that's really good. Then my smart ass came out. I was like, you know what? That is really good. I was like, that's a good one. You've been nursing that one for a while. That's good. Because now he's trying to play on the long-term psychological, like, oh, this one time won't hurt you. When you're 80, do you think you'll regret this? Possibly. You might be a killer. Like, who knows who you are?
Or a narcissist, and then for sure you'd regret it.
Absolutely. But it's just the fact that...
Can I ask another question in this then?
Absolutely.
And I can't help being a woman, right? And I can't help that for me, very personally, a few people have done some horrible things. But being on the media here, you get attacked and people lie about you and they won't stop and it's just horrible. But this narcissist thing, they make a problem every 2 minutes. And I think you were talking earlier on about it's a bit like with them, it doesn't matter whether you say something or you don't say something, they still can then have an argument.
Absolutely. It's their goal is to keep the argument going. So their goal is never resolution. Their goal is just to keep it spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. And that's one of my favorite ways to shut narcissists down is I force them to remain on topic. I force them to remain logical. I ask them to answer logical questions. And typically, the thing about truth and logic is that it always leads to some conclusion. So if something is true, there's really nothing, you can't go around truth. You can't go over it, under it. It kind of like the buck stops at truth. So it's like as long as you keep them on that truthful path and keep them trying to answer logical questions, they usually will get flustered and give up and leave you alone. Or, then they start with the insults and all that fun stuff, things like that. But narcissists can't battle logic and they can't battle truth, because that would require them to be honest and true people. That would require them to own up to the truth of what they've done to others, or what impact their actions have on society or have had on their life. So they have to kind of keep you going in circles is their objective. Because once you start to hit them with those hard questions that they cannot answer, that frustrates them even more, because they really do get a kick out of arguing with you. They know that they're not making any sense. They know that. They're aware. But
they can't remember all the lies they've told either.
Oh, yeah. And the thing about narcissists is a lot of them are so verbose. They love to talk, to hear their own voice. They don't even remember the things that they've said half of the time. And to me, that's one of the number one signs you're dealing with a narc, is they just talk. They repeat themselves quite often, and they have no recollection of what they said to you, because to them, it's not registering anywhere. It's not registering anywhere in their mind. It's just something to do.
I also think that they love drama.
They do, because I believe that drama is what kind of fuels them. It kind of gives them life. It gives them energy. And I think the knowledge that they caused it, but if it's the knowledge that they caused it and they're getting away with it, that's the ultimate for them. Like, that's their food right there. To stir the pot, to create a problem, step back and act like they weren't the ones who started it, and watch everyone else go at it. That's the ultimate fuel for them. That makes them feel like God in a way, because they can just do something and then have everyone else believe that they had nothing to do with it.
Permission to exist. I hope everybody subscribes to your channel. I really love it. But there's some other channels that help me as well. And two of them are interesting. They're men who are self-proclaimed narcissists. One is a guy named H.G. Tudor, and the other guy is Sam Vaknin. What do you think about the validity of actual narcissists being so mentally evolved? They understand what makes them tick and can help others to understand narcissism. Do you think that they really are narcissists, or what do you think?
So I've heard of Sam. Tudor I had not, though, so I'll have to check him out. I have mixed feelings on these individuals, very mixed, because it's my personal belief and opinion that, narcissists just don't have that level of self-awareness. And if you do have that level of self-awareness, that makes you particularly evil if you can then continue on in your methods and in your approach. If you know that it's harming other people, you know that it's hurting others, to the point where you can talk about it and explain, hey, this is what I do, this is why I do it, this is what I'm looking for out of that person, this is how I pull off my antics. To me, you're either they're trying to atone for what they've done, which wouldn't make them a narcissist, or they're truly, truly evil people who are so deeply narcissistic that they can actually calmly discuss what they do and how they think, but still claim that title. It's really hard for me to explain. So I have mixed feelings. And sorry for the beeping in the background. There's a truck backing up near my window, but I have really mixed feelings about those self-proclaimed narcissists, because it makes me wonder why then, or how can you continue in your actions? Because it seems to me, wow, it's getting really loud. Sorry, y'all. It seems to me.
You okay?
Okay. It seems to me that the message would be more of, hey, narcissists, I used to be just like you. Here's why you should stop doing this to people, versus, hey, I'm a narcissist and here's why we do what we do to you. It's so hard for me to explain. I'm mixed on that one.
I am too. I enjoy H.G. Tudor because he has this malevolent way of speaking, which makes him like that very devilish yet attractive. I don't mean physically, because you don't see him, but attractive personality who's a kind of cool and calculating. And in a story, he would make a very fun villain. But supposedly this is a real man who will even talk about his latest girlfriend is in the devaluation stage so coldly. This girlfriend, if that's even real, is a real human being like any of us here. And she's in the stage of being, you know, hurt by a narcissist, him, and he's speaking openly about it. Makes you want to just, you know, I don't know. It makes me mad that this is a real person out there.
It's almost like they derive a sense of pride from
Pleasure. Pleasure, even.
Pleasure. And again, it would be one thing if their message was, hey, you other narcissists, stop doing this because this hurts people. This is the outcome of my actions. Here's what happened to my life. Here's how I learned how not to be this way. But it's less of a confession. Again, in fairness, and I've only seen a few of Sam's. So in fairness, I can't speak to their body of work, but to me, it seems like the message would be more advocating against it versus trying to teach us how to live with it and work around it, if that makes any sense. So it doesn't seem like I'm sorry for it, is what I'm saying, basically.
Another word just pops into my mind, you know, on a personal level. But I mean, I think that's what everybody's doing, even if it's more a bit external. It's like they're making you into a prisoner.
A prisoner, a mental prisoner, largely with a prison that you built yourself. And that sounds crazy, but if you think about it, they do something. There are some people in the world, if you wrong them, that's all that it takes. They cut you out of their life and they have no dealings with you. So these people probably would know nothing about narcissism because they tend to get rid of narcissists quickly. They never get entangled with them. We might look at that person and say, wow, they're really harsh, or he or she's really cold. You know what I mean? But then if you were to talk to them about narcissism, they'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because if someone's rude to me or disrespectful to me, I cut them out of my life immediately and have no dealings. Those of us who erect the prison ourselves have that tendency to go, well, this person might be right. Maybe they're right. And then if you have enough narcissists saying you're wrong, then eventually you might go, gosh, well, maybe I am wrong.
No, back to that bit where I was saying about I'm okay, you're okay. In this book, I've got the book up there. Basically, inside you, you've got a child, a parent, and an adult. And the book says, well, when someone knocks on the door of life, who's going to open it? Your child, your parent, or your adult? Well, the first two are what's happened to you and how you treat yourself. So there could be the kid with the broken cookie. So there's the feeling, and there's also mannerisms, you know, stamping feet, crying, whatever it is. And then the parent, you know, scolding, the words they use, and that's how you treat yourself. But ultimately, we should be adults. The adult thinks a bit. Should I? Will I? Won't I? The other two react, and the adult in you thinks. And that's not happening with people, because all they're doing, if they don't even realize it, is they're just reliving what's happened to them. Probably 90% of it, 99 is when they were a child. And they don't realize it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like so many of us, I think everyone in the world needs therapy, to be honest with you, to uncover those types of patterns that you're talking about right there, those child-based patterns and that childlike thinking that tends to drive us, so we can correct it and move into our adult space. But you're absolutely...
A lot of things happen like with your parents, even if you don't, because everybody will go, what was your childhood like? And everybody will go, oh, it was really nice. It's only maybe when you think about it later on and look at yourself, you think it wasn't very nice at all. And, you know, you cover things up, and then I think your child deals with things better than your adult, actually. It's the adult who can't cope with it.
Absolutely. And you bring up a very good point, which is, I think a lot of people think that if I wasn't abused physically or sexually or otherwise as a child, then I had a good childhood. And that is not true. That is not necessarily true. There's a lot of people walking around with deep mental issues from parents who never hit them, never spanked them. They weren't abused or exposed to any kind of abuse, but their parents may or may not have been narcissists. and it has impacted them for the rest of their lives, and they don't realize it. I think we have to.
I just went off track myself and I couldn't remember it. But, you know, very often, if your parents aren't treated very nice, parents don't realize it. They are still the main attention. I know they have to be if you're married, but then there's the children. But they then take out on their children what's been taken away from them. So this is what I'm saying. We might have had better community in a way, but like, really? I mean, look at what we're coming from. Look what's come through us from our parents and society, and it's really bad. It's a generational thing, which we're hoping to sort of now waking up is to hopefully end this and make people realize and think differently about themselves for a start.
Absolutely. I think, I have so many opinions on this, but I try not to give them because I'm not a parent myself. So I have so many opinions on parenthood and family and all that stuff, but I just keep them to myself. But one of those is, you know, a lot of people didn't realize that their parents were actually irresponsible. And you might say, well, how? Well, I think a lot of times couples get married and they assume that because they're married, they can do whatever they want in terms of having as many children as they want. And then what happens is math kicks in, mathematics, and unless mom and dad both have great jobs or one or the other has a really great job, mathematically it becomes almost impossible to support that family to fruition. So then that starts to kick back in the form of, well, I'm not giving you that because I didn't have that growing up and you don't need that either. When the real truth is, I'm not giving you that because we can't afford it because we have too many of you guys. But it's okay. Society stamps it as okay because they're married. They did it in the sanctity of marriage. So therefore, any decisions they make for the family are okay because they're a married family. And I think that could be the beginning of the root of the problem. Or here's another way to look at it. A family, totally disregards mathematics, and then it occurs to them that they're going to need more money to survive. So one parent or the other or both take on positions and roles that will bring in that extra cash, but it takes them away from the family. So you now have enough money to survive, but you, the parent, are no longer there to guide that child. And as a result, the children end up without guidance. They end up without that foundation, that structure. I thought back to when I was a child, 12, 13, like my friends and I were left alone all the time. And I really sat and thought through it. And I'm like, because I look at the parents today, I look at Instagram, and I'm like, they are so involved in their kids' lives, which I think is great. I think that's an excellent thing. It made me reflect on the fact that my parents were always off working, always. My friends' parents were always off working. Everyone's parents were working. So we essentially raised ourselves. And that has turned out to be disastrous. That approach, because I don't think it was just myself and my friends. I really think it happened nationwide, where it suddenly became so expensive to live that the only way to raise these kids was to take on extra hours, take on new responsibilities, which are great for your career, but your kids suffer. So I'll stop there before I dig my hole too deep.
I like this open exchange of opinions that we're having, because not all of our opinions are in agreement, and yet they're all valid. And hey, we're only doing this on YouTube because we want everybody to participate and have their own opinions. So that makes it great.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you think a narcissist can ever be cured?
Ooh, so yes and no. There's a term I use on my channel called narcissistic fence walkers. And for those unfamiliar, to me, a narcissistic fence walker is someone who operates out of a narcissistic position. They do a lot of narcissistic things, but the first time that they're ever exposed to the reality of what they're doing, or they ever come to learn the impact of their actions, they change. They're humiliated by it. They're deeply apologetic. They go into like a reflective mode, and they kind of reflect on their whole life and realize the pain that they've caused. And sometimes they'll even try to make atonement for it. Not every time, but a lot of times they'll try to atone. And to me, that's someone who just, their mind was on one mode and was never challenged by anything, because maybe they were surrounded by narcissists. So then their thinking never got challenged. The first time it was challenged and proven that what you're doing is hurtful, they change. So I call those narcissistic fence walkers. However, I think the people who are really rooted in narcissism, what I call the true narcissists, unfortunately, and then this is just my non-medical opinion, in my opinion, there's no hope for them. They can't be changed. They go down with the ship, basically. So they hold fast to their method. They hold fast to their approach, to the point where it destroys them, to the point where it destroys their family. And if they have any influence whatsoever, political or otherwise, it destroys those people under their influence as well, because they just cannot be told or convinced that what they're doing is not right. It's not the right thing. And, you know, even unto death, they don't take that as proof. They'll have another excuse for that. So one way that this comes out is health related. So if you know a narcissist who's maybe suffering with health problems, some problems we can't avoid, we can't prevent. Some things we're born with. That's not what I mean. What I mean are health problems that were brought on by the person and can also be cured by the same person. The doctor will tell them, you need to stop doing this and start doing that. You have to stop doing this and start doing that. And that narcissist will smile on the doctor's face and say, yes, doctor. Okay, doctor, you're right. I'm going to change. And then they get home and they go right back to the exact same thing that got them in that position. And what makes it even more narcissistic is if they have children or family members, the expectation is that you care for me in my ill health, even though my ill health is of my own doing, and I refuse to change what's causing it. I refuse to live differently. So I give that example to say that true narcissists, there's no getting through. You can't break through that skull. And that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Well, basically, we have to stay away from them then.
Absolutely. Because it's like every time you let them back in, they make you regret being nice to them. That's been my experience anyway.
They will use anything you tell them when you first meet them at all, anything, regardless of what it is. A horrible incident from your childhood, how you might really feel about I'm making this up, by the way, about your best girlfriend or whatever. And then later in the discard / humiliation smear campaign, use that against you. These are not nice people. And I fully believe the only way they'll straighten out is when they're in the grave.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For those of you who have any inclinations towards the spiritual or the religious, there's a concept called the reprobate mind. And essentially what the reprobate mind is a mind that has basically been sealed off by God. So in other words, he sealed it off and said, there's no hope for this one. But again, that's, going into the religious a little bit, but they are the reprobate minds. They are those minds who have been capped, sealed, and kind of left to their own devices. And oftentimes it is the grave that ultimately has to stop them. You'll see children pleading with certain parents. I think this happens a lot when kids try to take the keys from a narcissistic parent who maybe's caused 4 or 5 different accidents, totaled a couple different cars as a result of their, health or whatever. And they just refuse to give those keys up, won't give them up, to their own detriment and to the detriment of everyone else around them. It's just another example. But it's like, it's the sad to me.
They're trying to be in control of everything, but they're not in control of themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the best ways to, anything that they can control, they try to. And then if they can't do it directly, they'll find an indirect way to control. They're very controlling people. I've done a couple videos on that. They're extremely controlling people. And that's not a good way to be. It's really not, because you close yourself off to feedback that can really help you in your life. when you're super
They're
controlling.
never really going to get to that stance we should be living in. I'm okay, you're okay.
Correct. They never reach that place. I've never met a happy narcissist.
They're
Never.
all miserable. They are all so darn miserable. Even if they pretend to be happy, when you're alone with them for a little while, you'll see they are miserable. They blame everybody for things in their life. They imagine slights that never happen from total strangers. They claim that they do things or are things that they're not. These are the kind of people that might have 3 or 4 musical instruments in their house, and they don't play any of them, but say they do and well, but won't play them in front of you. These are past masks they wore, the remnants of them littering their home. And by masks, these are people that they met in their past who maybe played a musical instrument. So they got a musical instrument to actually bond with that person in order to, do their narcissistic mojo on them. And then they have these things laying around, a bunch of musical instruments. I mean, that's just one thing. They'll have books that call back to a time when they met, and I'll just say they met a man who was into rock collecting. So they'll have rock collecting books, but they're not a rock collector. That was one of their past masks. These people are so complex. If they used all this craziness for good, they could solve all the world problems. But instead, all they want to do is step on people and crush them.
Emotionally, and do it emotionally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which to me, I think should be a crime, honestly. If they could ever find a way to prove it and make it provable, it should be criminal, what they do to people. It's so easy to say.
It's abuse.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
It's abuse.
It really is. And it's so untraceable. Unlike other crimes, you can point to that person and say, we caught you on video stealing out of the store. You're going to go to jail. Or we know you murdered this person. We have proof. We have evidence. You're going to jail. Narcissists it's almost impossible to prove their trail. They leave almost a traceless trail. The only evidence of their trail is the status of those people who are around them the most often. Those people who are closest to them usually are not thriving. They're usually not in the healthiest of states. That's the only evidence. But the narcissist will turn that on them, as opposed to recognizing that they've played a heavy hand in that destruction of those people. A heavy hand.
Can you talk a little bit about the masks that I alluded to that they wear, and how they target you and figure out what it is that you're all about and put a mask on that appeals to you, and then later when you're gone, they have a different mask on?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I feel like this comes out in a variety of different ways. Interpersonal relationships. I also feel that it comes out in the workplace quite often. These masks, one thing narcissists are very good at, as you were saying, if they would use these talents to other things, we could solve all the world's problems. But they're very good at reading you very quickly and leveling up to who they think you are and who they think you want them to be in order to wiggle their way into your life. So I'll give you a perfect example just from my life. When people meet me, they automatically, they like stand up straight. I can't explain what it is, but I make people like, I wouldn't say afraid. I used to be a teacher, and I think that teacher is still on me. So when people meet me, it's like, oh, there's the teacher. And they have to kind of like sit up straight for the teacher. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay, good. So what I found is that when I'm first meeting people, male or female, a lot of times they'll use their best grammar, they'll use their best English, they'll pretend to be interested in, because I like to go deep. I go way deep into all kinds of different topics. They pretend to be that person. So I'm sitting here thinking, wow, I've really met a cool person, and I'm connecting on all these levels, and we can talk about anything. This is awesome. And then what I find is that over time, that was a mask. Over time, the language slips. Over time, and believe me, I'm not a grammar Nazi or anything like that at all. But what I found is that what bothers me is that they didn't feel comfortable being themselves initially.
So they really like pretending to be something that they're not.
Correct. And then what happens is I'll bring up something really profound or deep, like the flat earth. I'll say, so let's talk about the shape of the earth. And what I find is that it's not just that topic, it's any topic really. They get exhausted by it. Like, oh, like they don't want to talk about those things because they never really were that person. they were pretending to be in order to kind of get closer to me. And then I'm consistent because it's pretty much who I am all the time. And then what I find is that they can't match that consistency because it's not really who they are. And so they'll change the topic, they'll change it to something, you know, easier to talk about. And then I start to realize this person was never that way. They've been pretending, they've been putting on this mask for me. So those masks, I feel, come in a variety of different forms, which is part of the reason the narc never really wants you to join forces with anyone else near them. They don't want you to link up and become friends with their friends, because then all the different masks start to come out.
Oftentimes they don't really have that many friends, to be honest.
They really don't. Because a lot of people will either just naturally move away from them or stop dealing with them because they suck everyone around them dry. They suck them dry.
The energy
You know?
in the room when you're with them is dead. It's dead. It's weird. Another thing I noticed that social media can help narcissists. I know personally, I made this list that I put on Facebook, probably Twitter as well. It was an intent for, you know how they always say, write down your intents if you want to find love or if you want to have a successful business. I wrote down and put it on Facebook, my intent for the perfect man that I wanted to meet. Perfect for me. I mean, no one's perfect. And this narcissist, as a Facebook friend, when first getting to know me, saw that list and became that man. Told me he was all those things. He said he never saw the list, but it's pretty uncanny how he presented himself to me as being that exact person. Then after the relationship ended, all of those things are not things that he is now. So be careful what you put on social media when you're making lists of intent, because a narcissist can use that as a handy dandy tool to put a mask on that'll suit you, and they'll fool you and suck you in.
I actually saw a meme. I'm going to see if I can find it while talking at the same time. That basically said, tell me everything about you so I can pretend to be that person. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Tell me everything meme. Let me see. I hope I can find it and I'll drop it in the chat. But I thought, I was reading the comments under it and I was like, this is not good, y'all. This is actually really scary. And the narcs on the thread were just like, oh, lighten up. It's just a joke, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, no, there's actually people out there thinking that. Tell me everything about you so I can pretend to be that person for you. Let me see. Tell me everything so I can pretend. And just the knowledge that this type of...
does have to go back to this bit where I just think a lot of people, right, when they move on from things, they just try to forget it. But you have to deal with things. If you don't deal with things, whoever you meet is always only going to then trigger off this stuff about yourself which you've not dealt with. And you're always going to go, it's them, it's them, it's them, but it's not, it's you. 90% of it's you. You're only in control of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I just see all that in there, which is all this psychology stuff, you know, because it's all this is going on as well as all the things they're doing to us now. And it's just, yeah. Obviously, some of us, like you said, can deal with it better and some of us can't.
Right. It's, I feel like for us, it's a fear. I think it's a deep fear of being mean to people. I don't know if this is going to come through, but I think you can click on that link I just dropped in the chat. This wasn't the exact one, but this was very similar to what it said, basically. So let me know if you guys are able to see that once you click on it. But it comes from a deep fear of being mean. We don't want to be mean to people. And narcissists are very good at putting on the, oh, you've hurt my feelings act. They're really mastered that because they know that it plays on us. And it's a fear of standing up for ourselves, a fear of speaking what we really think, because so many of us got punished for that. I know me personally, you know, I didn't grow up with physical or sexual abuse, but what I did grow up with was if I expressed something that went against the status quo of the family, you know, it was kind of like I was shamed and quieted, if you will. So, you know, that viewpoint is not welcome here. So, you know, you're not allowed to express that, or you're not allowed to have that preference. And so I learned how to be quiet at an early age. I learned that the things that I think are not correct, so let me not share them, because the last thing I want people to think about me is that I think things that are incorrect. So I keep my thoughts and opinions to myself, and still to this day often second guess the things that I think and say, because I learned very early on that's a great way of alienating the people around you.
I think a lot of women are like that. They have that in them to keep quiet. And sometimes it's because not just that you'll alienate other people, but you'll alienate other people because they don't want I'm not being harsh on men, but some men don't want women to have good ideas and want them to keep quiet. Right.
And I meet so many women, and my heart just goes out to women, because I feel like we were the least trained to have that assertiveness and that confidence. And we were trained essentially to be very supportive, which is great, you know, but also to not have faith in our own voice and not have confidence in our voice. And it plays out in so many different ways. The things that happen to us that we know aren't right, but oftentimes we'll just leave, you know. We don't stay and fight very often, because we've learned that also being a fighter in any way is frowned upon. You know, oh, you're so aggressive. Oh my goodness. You know what I mean? She's so aggressive. She's so negative. She's such a negative person. You know what I mean?
Yes. With narcissists, though, if you've been entangled with one and you try to get away, and they try to either hoover you back in to beat you up some more, or they run the smear campaign on you to make everyone, you know, distrust and dislike you. With that aspect of narcissism, it's very hard because everyone's getting to know more and more about narcissists these days. It's in the news, it's everywhere. It's really hard for people who are men and women who are going into the dating world to, I don't know, to even trust anyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can I ask something as well on top of that? Is this something that's multi-generational then? So this is something that's coming in because the people before were like it and they're instilling it in their children? Or is this like an illness? It just happens to some people.
Here's what I think. I believe that the majority of our societies were built on what's called a command and control model. And, you know, essentially something that's designed for armies, because it's very helpful to have an army that does exactly what you say when you say it without asking a lot of questions. If you want to win a war, you can't have a lot of opinionated soldiers. You have to have people who are very good at taking orders. So I think what happened is we've come off of centuries of a military-based lifestyle. And I don't just mean America, I mean globally. Societies were set up based on military might, wars and slaughters and what have you. Societies were established that way. Then once we got kind of settled and became kind of industrialized, we started with schooling. And schooling was the same way, command and control. I'm the teacher, you're the student. You listen to what I say, you don't question my authority, right? So then you have generations of people who either came from the military might that set up a society, then it came through the schools, more command and control. But what happened, in my opinion, is as we started to revolutionize and as we started to implement more technology and more information was being shared, more books printed, more reading, people started to slowly wake up to the fact that, okay, this worked kind of to set the society up, but it's not going to be what it takes to keep society going. So to answer your question, I do think generationally it has been instilled. And I think what we're seeing now is the breakdown of that particular programming, which is you have to have an authority, and then you have to have the people who listen to that authority, and that you're not supposed to question authority because authority is always right. And authority is always going to do what's best for society at large. I think people are learning that our approach up to this point yeah, it's gotten us this far. It's not going to take us to the next level. So I think it is generally, I think it's culturally ingrained. And I also do think it's also an illness, because if you think about it, what would ever make it okay to invade another country and just kill off all the people because you want it, because you want to live there and you don't want them to live there anymore? You know what I mean? And we read about it in the history books and we're like, oh, well, that was just the blah, blah, blah war, or that was just the invasion of blah, blah, blah. And then we don't really stop to consider what that meant. Like, usually they weren't invading for protection. They were usually invading for resources. And what would ever make that okay? That has to be the illness piece. The fact that the way human beings have treated each other over the centuries, that has to be some sort of psychological and mental illness. It has to be. Do you see what I mean? Where I'm getting at with that?
We're higher frequency beings. That's where we should be, more sort of spiritual, sort of, I don't know. And what we're talking about is none of that.
Correct. Oh, you're so correct. We're now finally coming to that place of a higher frequency. We're finally taking a step back and looking at what we've done. And the problem is, oftentimes people will argue, well, we put airplanes in the sky. We have skyscrapers and the internet and technology. And the only reason you guys are able to have this hangout right now is because some computer programmer has made this possible. So in many ways, there's this belief that we've achieved so much, but my argument is always, you build with the left hand and then you destroy with the right hand, or vice versa. You build with the right hand, destroy with the left. So how great is your society when your society still has not figured out how to stop killing each other? Your society is not that great. It's not. If there are still people on the street starving to death and homeless or whatever, your society is not that great. Your society is not great until everyone is okay. And I know that sounds really idealistic and optimistic, but it's kind of like you haven't succeeded yet, because you still haven't figured out how to make this work for everybody, or how to do it without physical and violent force. So it's the mindset that we could ever treat another human being like they don't matter or like they're less than. To me, that's the illness that's driving all the rest of the stuff.
I was just, because, you know, like basically most of this is not the people's fault. This is what's happened to them. If you look at it, that it's generational. Yeah. And I was just going to say, well, it's the poor people and you can't blame them. But on the other hand, when you're talking about these people, you can't feel sorry for them either, because feeling sorry doesn't help either.
It really doesn't. It doesn't. I feel like the only thing that will really help is bringing this to everyone's attention, bringing their awareness to, because it drives so many different things, I did a video called Narcissism and Sales, where I talked about a time where I was working for a retailer and I loved the job, with the exception of the fact that they made us push the credit card on people, and that we had to hear 3 different no's before we could back off of the customer. So if you walk into my store, hi, welcome. I won't say the name because people told me I shouldn't, but hi, welcome to the store. Do you have our credit card? And you're like, oh, no, thank you. I don't use credit cards. Oh, but did you know that you could save 15% by signing up today? Oh, that sounds great, but no, thank you. But ma'am, you seem to shop here a lot. I bet you could really use that 15%. Why don't you sign up today? No, I'm really okay. Then I can back off. After I've pestered you 3 different times, now I can back off. So the narcissism driving that is, you push this credit card no matter what. No matter how many different no's you've heard, find a different angle, because clearly they don't know what's good for them. Because if they knew what was good for them, they'd sign up for this credit card. So the narcissism comes in with the presumption that I know what's better for you than you do. You know what I mean? The fact that I don't hear your no, that your no is not good enough for me, because I want you to have this credit card so I can charge you 30% interest. So I need you to sign up for this credit card. My need for you to sign up for this credit card is greater than your need. Yeah. You see what I get that?
Yeah.
So it's so all encompassing.
If you don't do it, they don't. This is on a personal level. If you don't do it, then you don't love them. So they've got an answer to every angle.
Correct. Like, obviously you don't care. Like, I've seen associates, if I tell them, no, thank you, I don't want whatever, credit card, I've seen their whole mood shift from one that's been very friendly and welcoming and hi, welcome to, like, obviously you're just mean and you just don't want to sign up for this credit card because you're just being mean. You see what I mean? So it's like a punishment for you standing up for what you believe is right for you. They will punish you for that. And I'm trying to, it scares me so much to see the direction our country is going here in America, because we're getting there to a punishment for people standing up and saying, this is not right. There's a punishing element to that. And narcissists oftentimes are in a position of power to punish. So it's like I want to make sure everyone recognizes what it is, so we don't continuously put leaders in power who are suffering from this disorder.
Yeah, and the only person that's really keeping the prison a bit is that person. That person is the jailer and the prisoner, and likes making everyone else prisoners. You're never going to live up to what they want in the first place, are you?
Never. And let me tell you, I overheard a very interesting conversation the other day, and I wanted to interject so bad, but I decided to mind my own business, and which is actually contributing to the problem. But I overheard 3 women talking, and they were talking about another young lady that had just started with their company. And the conversation started off like this. The one girl goes, so I'll just call her Nancy. So what do you think of Nancy? And the other 2 women kind of like shift uncomfortably in their seats, and they're like, well, I think she's just really over the top. I really just think that she's just doing too much. She's too new. She just needs to relax a little bit and fall back. And so they talk a little bit more. And then what I gleaned from their conversation is they didn't like her because she asked too many questions, was their primary reason for not liking her. But then about halfway through the conversation, the girl who started the conversation, she goes, yeah, I think she's been over it since she started. I mean, she really doesn't have the support that she needs to do her work. And the other 2 were like, yeah. And they go, and that Nick can sell a beach house in Idaho. And if you don't get that reference, basically Idaho has no shoreline here in the States. There's no beach, there's no coast. So if someone can sell you a beach house in Idaho, it means you're really naive and they're really good at what they do. So long story short was, they don't like her because she asked questions or asked too many questions, but they also knew that this woman was unsupported, that she didn't have the tools or the resources that she needed to do her job. And they also knew that the person who was over her was basically a liar. They knew that this person was a liar. They're like, well, Nick, he can sell a beach house in Idaho. And so I'm like, but at the end of the conversation, they decided, all 3 of them decided that they were going to distance themselves from this girl because, they just don't want to be like associated with her because she, people have decided that they don't like her. So as a collective, they've decided to distance themselves from this girl. And I felt so bad for this individual who works at this company because I've been her. I know who she is. I am that girl. I ask questions because I'm not getting training. So I ask the questions to try to get the training I'm not getting. You know what I mean? I get burnt out usually pretty easily, pretty quickly, because I don't have the tools and the resources I need to do my job. And then the people who could possibly help me collaborate, they get together and then collectively decide that they're going to distance themselves. And this poor girl is probably sitting there feeling like an island, feeling alone, not knowing what she did wrong. You know what I mean? And then the person who's over her is a liar. Well, Nick, he can sell a beach house in Idaho. So he's a liar. So in other words, it's like a coven of narcissists. This Nick person, these 3 women.
This is because we're now a society where nobody takes responsibility for themselves.
Yes. Are you saying, does the greater issue of narcissism occur when that happens?
Yeah, it's like that, if we're a society that doesn't take responsibility, it's always going to be someone else's fault, not mine. And if we're already like that, then you're a narcissist. Imagine what you're going to do with that.
Absolutely, because then it becomes everyone else's problem also. So it's kind of like a friend of mine one time, she said, If everyone thinks somebody's watching the kid, nobody's watching the kid, because she had just had a baby. He was about 1 year old. And she was just talking, just musing about motherhood. And she said, if everyone thinks someone is watching the kid, nobody's watching the kid, because everyone thinks somebody else is watching the kid. So it's like, her point was, you have to know who's watching the kid or be watching them yourself. And I think that plays exactly into what you're saying. These three women, you know, see the problem. They see this individual caught out there on an island by herself with no support from any direction. And all three of them have decided that they're not going to take any action because, of course, they want to protect their job and their name, I guess. So there's that. So we see a problem as a society. And because we're so self-protecting, we won't do what's right on the whole because we want to protect ourselves. And then we also feel like it's not our problem. That's not my problem. That's affecting them over there. It's not affecting me over here. So I'm not going to do anything about it. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, because I mean, if they're not like, if you've got like this thing going on in your head in the first place and you're not responsible for yourself, it won't matter, will it?
Not at all. Not at all. You know, not at all. And it creates a society full of people who take no action towards anything. So oftentimes when I hear people bemoan the current state of America, I always say that this is the country that we've earned. We've earned this. We've earned our present state because so many people, and that's not to take away from those who have, you know, been activists and tried to fight for what's right, but there are more people who are willing to turn a blind eye because they feel like it has nothing to do with them. And as a result, pretty much anything goes. And this is the society that we've earned. We've earned our way here by not standing up, by not speaking up for what's right, by seeing something happen to a brother or sister and saying, well, that's them, not me, I'm okay. I'm all right over here. And so what happens is when you don't protect the least, eventually it snowballs to the point where nobody's protected, if that makes any sense. It starts small and then it snowballs to the point where everyone is unsafe at this point.
It's like that First They Came for the Socialists poem. The guy who was a Protestant pastor, and he was an outspoken against Adolf Hitler, but forget about it having anything to do with Hitler. But it's first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And it goes on and on to the end where it says, and then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me.
Oh, I'm going to Google this right now. I've never heard this one.
Martin Niemöller, Niemöller. First They Came, I think it's called.
Let's see here.
But it applies to many situations. It even applies to narcissism in a different way, in that if you see somebody being attacked by a narcissist, if you just sit there quietly and say, well, they're not attacking me, that narcissist is being given permission to exist in a way. Because no one is speaking up for the victim, and your silence makes you complicit. No, there's a narcissist attacking somebody who's innocent in a smear campaign, and you're silent and you say nothing because maybe you're afraid the narcissist will attack you. And by the way, they will if you raise your head up like the whack-a-mole game. You are complicit. It's best to speak out, even if you get attacked by the narcissist, because the more people who see the narcissist attacking more people, the more people will go, hey, there's something wrong with that guy, or there's something wrong with that girl. And they'll be outed from the community. Absolutely.
I think their greatest weapon, narcissist's greatest weapon, is silence, making people feel afraid to speak, to tell their story. That is their absolute 100%
power then.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
All to do with power.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The power to silence and the power, like you said, to exist. They're given permission to exist with every silent mouth. They're given permission to exist. And there was a question that came earlier, and I forget what the exact question was. But this makes me think of that, which is the only way for us to do away with this, or at least push them all into a corner where all they have is each other, is if more people gain the courage to take the hits, because you're going to get hit when you speak out. You are absolutely going to get smacked, but at least it's documented. It's known, it's been pointed out. And even if it doesn't come out in the near future, eventually, because narcissists are so consistent and they can't help themselves, they're going to do it again. And somebody will go, now this is exactly what that person said. And I didn't believe them at the time, but these are the exact traits and characteristics that were brought out before. And then if enough people speak up, eventually these people will be found out. Their patterns will be discovered. Oftentimes when I leave a job, I'll do an exit interview or a sit down interview, not because I believe anything will change for me, but I want it documented somewhere. So when it happens again, people start to go, wow, this is everything that she said. And we dismissed it. We dismissed her, we wrote her off, and now it's happening again. And usually probably worse, because think about it. If a narcissist gets away with something, that emboldens them, that gives them power.
And they charge up. They charge up with power.
What is it when someone is being a narcissist and they're making money out of it? What does that make them?
A rich narcissist, a wealthy narcissist. No, honestly, what that makes them probably is the leader of one of our corporations.
Yes, exactly. Or even the leader in particular social groups that could be in social media. They oftentimes rise to the top, although they're incredibly lazy people, but they can use their cult of personality to rise to the top. And a lot of times people who see others being attacked by the narcissist and who don't speak up will only realize that they're dealing with a narcissist when that narcissist turns their sights on them and they get attacked. Until then, they would have ignored all the other people around them, all the bodies falling by the wayside.
They like sucking you in, don't they?
Yeah,
absolutely. It's and you know, I have a special place in my, not heart, but where whatever is opposite of heart, for those people who do see what's happening and turn a blind eye. I've been meaning to do a video called Narcissism in Hindsight, which is basically those people who have been narcissists or participated in a narcissistic campaign until it affects them. And then once it affects them, now they completely flip and they're completely anti-narcissism, which is great. That's awesome that you finally got there. But how many casualties are on your hands for what you ignored until it happened to you, until it affected your families? Now that it finally has affected your family, now you want to do something about it. And I just take so much umbrage with that, because it's like, and I get that human beings are pretty hard-headed in general. So sometimes they just have to go through it in order to understand it. But there are some things you shouldn't have to go through in order to empathize with. That's just my opinion. So, you know, kudos for them finally waking up. But wow, would you have ever woken up if it had not affected you personally? I found the poem too. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. So that is powerful. I might have to end up doing a video on that.
The thing is, what happens is with these people is that they're pushing everybody away.
Mm-hmm. They are, but they still have enough friends, and I put that in quotations, to feel comfortable. They still have enough of a community to tell them what you're doing is not wrong. What you're doing is okay.
Flying monkeys and the unaware. Those are their friends.
Those are their friends. Enough people who are blinded by that cult of personality to continue to encourage them in their wicked pathway, to where they just think the problem is with us. They think that we're weak. They think that, you know, we just can't take a joke. You know what I mean? They have come up with a million different reasons for why it's our fault that they do what they do. So there's still a big enough cushion there. Part of what I'm trying to do with my channel is remove that cushion. I'm trying to make it to where more and more people are going, hey man, you're displaying some symptoms of narcissism there, bud. I don't, or hey lady, hey chick, you're just displaying some narcissistic symptoms there. I don't think that this is okay what you're doing. To make it to where they can continue to be narcissists if they want, but they'll only have each other to feast on. That's all I want, is for them to leave us alone. So the rest of us can live normal enough.
Do narcissists like each other, or do they stay away from each other? I know you said that they can work each other out, but do they actually like each other or stay away from each other?
I don't think they like each other at all, actually. I think they despise each other on some level, but I think that they feel safe with each other.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. So true. In fact, you'll hear two people who are narcissists independently, and you figure out what they're like. And then later you might see them together and you think like two fires, they'd burn themselves out, but they can work together to even hurt more people. And I know that each one knows the other one's a narc, and they allow the other person to lie and don't confront the other person. It's like they're working hand in hand sometimes. It's so weird.
Absolutely. It's like a very sick union between the two. I do think they eventually turn on each other, but it takes a long time for them to get there because they have a lot of targets that they can take out together as a group first. And then once they run out of targets, because eventually they will, they turn on each other. And that's the thing about narcissism. It does reach a point of implosion and self-destruction. It can just take a long time to get there, a long time. But it does eventually come because they eventually exhaust all their targets. So then all that's left are the other narcissists. I've seen two narcissists meet before, and it's funny because they usually spend the first 30 minutes or so trying to one-up each other, casually, not, obviously, but very casually trying to one-up each other. And then eventually the weaker narc gets irritated. And it's so funny to me to watch them get irritated by the same behaviors that they do to everyone else, And then sometimes the weaker narc will try to join forces, but usually what I've seen them do is just try to get everyone to turn against the big narc, basically. If they can't have the floor, then they try to make sure that floor gets taken away from the person who does. That's what I've seen.
So they'll have a pecking order amongst them.
Absolutely. And the thing, and here would be my message to any narcs that might have drifted onto this stream or who might hear it in the future, is you know what you're doing and you see the people dropping like flies beneath you. And I'm curious what makes you think it's not headed your way. I'm really curious what makes you think that the same forces that are operating to take out these small targets, people who have nothing to fight with or against, aren't working their way towards you. So that's my message, a question to any narcissist that drift on this channel, is what makes you think you're so safe from these forces that you participate in? Because you're not. Going back to one of the comments that was stated earlier, I've seen jobs where, I'll start the job, things start off great as usual. Then always they take that left-hand turn. Eventually I quit and I feel bad. I beat myself up about it, because I feel like I failed in some way, only to catch wind a couple months later that the boss who was terrorizing me got fired. Then wait a few more months, their boss got fired. And then in one situation, the CEO of the whole company got fired. So it was very, I hate that people were losing their jobs, but at the same time, it's like, it made me feel better knowing that I was part of a narcissistic den of demons. I excused myself and I wasn't incorrect in that action because this snowball was rolling and I just got out of the way of it. And the people who were terrorizing me caught it too. And I'm sure that,
you think the main aim of them is to make you feel bad? They just don't care how they do it as long as you feel bad.
Yes, because
just like they feel inside.
Absolutely. Because and I did a video on this called Narcissists Hate Your Positive Traits. And I pulled a clip from another young woman's channel who she's a self-proclaimed narcissist. She says she's trying to get better. And she basically went into detail about how she was jealous of her husband because he's always happy. She's like, he's had all this stuff happen to him. He's gone through all these different life events, and somehow he's still happy. Whereas she was saying that she herself had been through a lot of different things and she can't get past it. She can't get over it. So she just enjoyed taking his happiness down a notch or two, kind of dimming his light a little bit, because she didn't understand how a person who had gone through what he went through could still be joyful about anything. And she was jealous of that ability of his. So she would do things to purposely try to bring down his happiness level, and take him down a few notches, because she couldn't stand to see him happy, because she basically didn't think it was fair for him to still feel happiness in spite of his life circumstances. And she didn't know how to feel that happiness. So yes, they're trying to bring you down to their vibration and their level, because then it's like, oh, okay, now I can feel better about myself. You're miserable. I'm miserable. Great. We're all miserable, you know, and now I feel comfortable around you. You know, they're really trying to stomp out that happiness, that joy, that light that you might have in spite of great difficulty. They're trying to wipe that out because they don't want you to be happy. They want to wipe that smile off of your face, because they don't know how to generate that smile themselves.
But they don't know what they want either, do they? Because they don't want you happy, they don't want you sad, they don't want you this, they don't want you that. So it doesn't matter what you do, it's always going to be wrong.
Oh, always. Always. And it changes on a whim. So you might think that you figured your narc out, you know what to do to keep them from getting set off, you know how not to be or how to be, and then it's something new the following week, something new that you're not achieving or not doing right. So it's like they want you to feel as off base as they are, you know. Confidence, they don't like confident people, because like we stated earlier, they've gone through things themselves that have damaged their confidence. They never learned how to recover. And instead of them just keeping that inside, their goal is to bring down as many people as possible with them. It's sad. Like it's such a sad way of being. It's such a messed up way of interacting with the world.
I've never really thought about narcissism, like I said when you first started this conversation, until I had one involved with myself. Had I knew about narcissists, I think I would have better been able to have identified the person coming at me was a narcissist before I got involved in a relationship with them. So I think your channel is not just great to listen to after you've been skewered by one, but as I don't know what you call it, a precursor, I guess. Everyone should listen to these videos and maybe start it the way back a year ago and then work their way forward after subscribing to the channel, just so that they're forearmed is forewarned, or however that expression goes.
Absolutely. I said, I'm sorry about the background noise again. I don't know what they're building out here, but you know, I think that, so one of their greatest weapons is silencing their victims, and just silencing people in general regarding who they are.
Yeah, because that's what happens. Because when they do these things repeatedly, in the end, you give up and you go silent and start looking at the floor.
So there's that. Absolutely. Keep them quiet. And the other most powerful weapon they have is a lack of knowledge and a lack of awareness about them, who they are. And this comes out, I did a video called How Not to Be a Narcissist. I think that comment section is worthy of just some exploration, because a lot of people who think they might be come there and they say, okay, I think this is me. You pretty much just described me, you know, but now I don't know how to break out of it. Or I've destroyed my family at this point. So now what do I do? You know, but they might be more so fence walkers, but I digress. That lack of awareness and the silence from the victims is what keeps these people going. It's what gives them strength and the power to go on. And that's what I'm trying to annihilate. Annihilate is just them operating in the shadows, because they've been so successful at it for such a long time. You know, but I do think people are waking up, and more people are discovering narcissism as more than, you know, the selfies and just being self-absorbed, like talking about yourself all the time. That's tip of the iceberg. That might be a snowflake.
We're supposed to love ourselves, aren't we? You know,
Yes.
how many go to the mirror and look in it and say, I love you. And I don't mean sarcastically. You've got to love yourself. But this is different because this is all about, if only they realize that they're covering up a flaw that they don't want anybody else to see because couldn't handle it by being broken. And so the rest of it is to cover it all up. And all they do is treat everybody, whoever gets involved with them, as friends, girlfriends, really badly.
It seems like when the average understanding of narcissism is the person taking lots of selfies who says, "Oh, I'm so beautiful or so handsome," you know, the person buying Axe cologne body spray. I don't know if you've got that in the UK, but, you know, just this very self-obsessed person. But in reality, the narcissist literally hates themselves. They're not full of self-love, mentally or physically. They dislike themselves. And they find victims who are actually better people than they are, victims who have qualities they wish to possess. Then they obtain that victim, suck all the life out of them, copy all their qualities, add their qualities to their own personal bag of tricks, and add another mask to their game so they can go fool someone else. They actually feed on people. They're parasitic.
They really are. They're parasitic. And I read something very interesting. I think I like that all this conversation is happening around bullying in schools and things like that, because it's causing more and more former bullies to come out and kind of speak about their mindset regarding other people. And one thing I thought was really interesting is one of the bullies said, you know, when you grow up feeling like you're not the pretty person, when you see something happen to the pretty person, it makes you happy. And I wish I had saved that article and still knew where it was, because I thought it was so powerful. In other words, these people think that attractive people are already gifted beyond their wildest dreams. They've already received the best present that a person can get, which is being attractive. So when something happens to the pretty person, it makes them happy. They're like, oh, good, you deserve, you're so handsome, or you're so beautiful, you deserve that. I'm happy you're crying because you already have the greatest thing that there is. So to see something bad happening to the pretty person, it makes them happy. And then the narcissist takes it a step further. And if they can be the ones inflicting that unhappiness on the pretty person, that fills them with joy. That's true. That's how deep it is.
Well,
and that's why people in general love those tabloid trash magazines that are in the grocery store checkout line. They'll look at the famous and the beautiful and say, oh, look, that one's getting divorced. Oh, look, that one got fat. Oh, look, that one was caught shoplifting, or something that makes their own lives feel better. So maybe there's a tiny bit of narcissism in all of us, but not to the degree that a true narcissist has. Not at all.
No, not at all. And I think, touching on something that we spoke on earlier, I think if there's anything we could do for young people and young children, is find a way to start building up their self-esteem in a real way. So those of you, if you follow the channel, I really hate cliches. And the reason I hate cliches is because they're trite. So they've lost all their meaning, they've lost all their power, they've lost the original intention behind the message. So oftentimes when we talk to kids, we'll say things like, be yourself, go follow your dreams, follow your passions. And kids are looking at you like, what does that mean exactly? What do you mean, be myself? I hate myself. So what do you mean, be myself? You know what I mean? Like, they really don't know how to build their self-esteem, because it's not one of those things that is second nature to a person. So I think we have to find a way to focus our efforts and energies on building children up so they feel comfortable in exactly who they are, as they are, and then they work towards those things that they want, so they don't feel that joy when something happens to the pretty person. Because chances are the pretty person doesn't even think that they're pretty. And oh man, that could take me down a whole nother rabbit hole as far as why we're targeted.
Oh, please go down that rabbit hole. I find that idea very interesting.
So here's, okay, all right, I'm going down the rabbit hole. So it's interesting because the narcissist often targets people who don't hold the same beliefs about themselves that the narcissist holds about them. So in other words, oh, the pretty person got a bad grade, good, that's what they deserve. And the pretty person is sitting there going, wow, not only am I unattractive, but now I'm getting bad grades. So it's almost like the narcissist tells themselves a story about someone, their target, that may or may not even be true. It might not even be true. So oftentimes when we're interacting with these narcissists, they're interacting with an artificial version of us, a version of us that they've made up in their mind. So sometimes they'll do things and you're like, where is this coming from? It's coming from that artificial story they've told themselves about you. You're pretty, you're privileged, you're attractive, you have it all, you came from a great family, you have nothing to complain about, nothing. You know, you didn't go through what I went through. Not even taking the time to actually learn your story, learn your struggle, learn those things that you struggle with, which might be very similar to them. So then, once they built up the fake story about you, they start interacting with you based on that fake story. And that's when the real insanity comes out, because you're like, I just don't understand where this is coming from. Coming from that artificial story they told you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a lot of playing games, isn't it? It's constantly playing a game with yourself.
I don't think they're aware they're playing games. That's the thing. Or maybe they are. That's the one part about narcissists I don't get. Do they know? I know we've touched on this before, but I still am confused. Do they know what they're doing? Do they go to bed at night when they're alone and their room is dark as they're staring up at the ceiling and think, I'm a jerk, I'm a horrible human being, I'm hurting people? Or are they thinking, I'm winning, I'm the king, I'm cool, everyone loves me? I don't know.
Here's what one narc told me. One narc told me that she cannot or prefers to not ever be alone. So she doesn't want to live alone. She doesn't like to be alone for very long because she does not want the thoughts that come. And I thought that that was pretty profound. And I think a lot of them are like that because I think they do know.
They don't want to deal with themselves.
Not at all. Because they'd have to think through, you know, as long as there's noise and distraction around, activity, people, places, busy, 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 as long as they're busy, 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 they never actually have to take the time to think through what they've done to people or the impact that they've had. Because when they do, it starts to eat whatever little bit of conscience is left, it starts to eat that alive. And rack them with the guilt that they stuff down throughout the day. They stuff down all that guilt. It starts to bubble up when they're by themselves.
It seems they need feeding, in my opinion. I think that they need the juice of their victims, like a spider sucking the blood out of a fly. They go through a period of time where they are fine because they fed enough on our energy. And then they need to start some trouble. So they find previous victims or new ones, start some trouble, and then suck all the juice out of the trouble. And the trouble could provide juice of a bunch of people yelling at them and calling them out, or people saying that they're the greatest thing ever. They seem to thrive off the energy and the juice, either positive or negative, equally the same.
And they also seem to want the attention on them.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's almost like, to me, I feel like this is how they prove to themselves that they are alive. So the rest of us kind of know that we're alive. I think for the most part, we're pretty aware of that. But I think the narcissist doesn't actually feel alive until they've caused a reaction of some sort. Because then that's proof. And a way that I could explain that is, if you were a ghost and you could see everything, you could see everyone, but they can't see you, you're going to knock stuff off the shelf. You're going to ring the doorbell, anything to prove to yourself that you're still real. Like, people don't seem to be able to see me, so let me cause a cold draft. And then if they shudder, I know that I still have an impact. I know I'm still real. I can still influence things. I can influence people as long as I still have an impact on them. But if I send a cold breeze or I ring the doorbell and none of them notice, now I really know that I'm a ghost. Now I really know that I'm not real. And now I'm really distressed because now what do I do? I have no impact. No one sees me. I have no influence. So, and nothing I'm doing is working. So maybe I just have to go on to the next realm or just be content being a ghost. But the truth is, they're not really ghosts. They're ghosts in their own mind. So they almost feel like if they don't do these things, no one will even know that they exist. And that's not true. It's like you don't have to do these things to people to prove your reality to yourself. You don't. You could just be a normal person, whatever that means.
Yeah. So what do you reckon it is where some people aren't like that, even if we've all had these horrible childhoods?
Mm-hmm.
How come some people aren't like that then and some people are? Just obviously a chemical imbalance or something.
I think, I talk about this on my channel heavily. I think it's the presence or absence of what I call the empathy chip. And I feel like either it was never installed at birth or it's just never been activated. So I think those of us who go through these traumatic things and choose not to be terrible people at the end is because we still have that empathy chip in us. We still have that component in us that makes us a human being. I feel like we still have the ability to be rational and reasonable. So, you know, just because you got hurt one time or two times by XYZ, you might be a little gun shy, but you're not going to create an elaborate story about this particular group of people. You're more rational than that. You recognize sometimes things are isolated. You recognize that it wasn't just you, that unfair things happen to a lot of people. You're able to kind of rationalize and reason out in your mind and understand that all people are not bad, and that you don't have to manage people on the front end via narcissism to prevent yourself from getting hurt. You know, you can just be a healthy person with healthy boundaries. You can be a nice person with boundaries. And I think that's what differentiates us. I think narcissists feel like it's not possible to be both. You can't be kind with boundaries. You have to be nasty and controlling in order to maintain your boundaries versus a kind person who just says you shall go no further than here. And that doesn't make you mean. It just makes you a person with boundaries. So I think it's the presence or absence of something. And I get really deep into it on my channel, but I think that it's just something that's either there or it's not. It's like they really live life blindly and they really live life on autopilot to the point where they pretty much, a lot of them live the exact same day every single day, like Groundhog's Day. They just wake up and they live the exact same day every single day, just on autopilot.
And they figure out how to be a human being by mirroring the qualities of other actual real human beings, it seems.
Correct. Like they are good at mimicking, but it always comes out in conversation and in actions. Very repetitive people who just don't seem to grasp what's going on around them. No clue.
But they can also, as we had said earlier, rise to high places within social media circles or within business, or, you know, be the leader of something, or a father or mother running a household. So because they are in these high positions, a lot of people just take their behavior for granted. You know, well, that's just how Bob the boss is. That's just how so-and-so is. Yeah, you know, they're a little bit headstrong, but they do a good job around here. And they're not ever, for the most part, called out for the things that they do to other people because they're having so much success in certain areas. And people would rather enjoy the success aspect of what that person is doing and not notice all the dead bodies at their feet. Absolutely.
Oh, man. Oh, absolutely. And you know what? A story just came out recently. I think the name of the company is Theranos, where the CEO just got indicted federally for wire fraud. So apparently the CEO is a woman, and I think her co-founder was a man, I'm not sure. But apparently they were making and marketing medical products with claims that these were, you know, the highest caliber, highest grade products on the market. And basically, long story short, they were just lying. Like, their products didn't do that. Their products didn't perform up to standard. And what made it so egregious was that this was a medical company. So they were literally affecting human life. People were relying on the results of these tests from their equipment. And the end result was faulty, was not accurate. And she just got indicted, and so did her co-founder. And all I could think to myself was, how many people said something? I guarantee you there was at least a dozen people to come through that organization who could see what was happening. Like, this is not true, guys. Like, look, I just did this report. I just ran this test, and the machine is not working. How many of those people were quietly or forcefully escorted out the door, you know what I mean, and told that they didn't have a positive attitude? How many people have, you know, spoke up about their leader or their manager? Because really, this is all answering your question or your statement. It's almost like once you protect the highest criminal, then another criminal has to protect you. It's like a criminal protection thing. So it's like they never get in trouble, because if another narcissist rats on a higher level narcissist, well, that higher level narc is then going to say, oh, well, Johnny, what about all that money that you hid, you know, or all those books that you cooked? So it's like they know each other's dirty secrets. So they can't tell on each other, because if they do tell on each other, then that's essentially telling on themselves eventually.
Very true. Wow, that's really well put. You know, there's something called narcissistic injury. And for me, that's when, you know, that's when a narcissist, that's their wounded, that's their part that can be wounded. And they're very, very sensitive to injury because they have super low self-esteem, although they hide it with a veneer of super high self-esteem. And anything that would make them feel degraded or humiliated, that's the time when they will show their soft underbelly, the underbelly that says, I am a narcissist on it, to everyone. And whenever you see a narcissist crazily attacking, that's when you know that the person they're attacking has somehow accidentally or on purpose made a scratch in their self-esteem. So do you think it's a good idea to try to call narcissists out? Or do you think that it's maybe too dangerous and the best thing is no contact ever again, as many narcissist experts say?
I think a lot of times, especially with the way our society is currently, I believe that it is more dangerous to call them out, especially once you realize you have no help. So once you realize that the people in your immediate vicinity are either protectors of the narc or so grossly unaware that it would take you a day to explain to them what narcissism is, what the problem is, the impact. I think once you realize you have no help surrounding you, the best bet is just to get out and go no contact, because you won't be believed, and it will take a very long time for that narcissist's true colors to come out. They will come out.
They will?
Oh, absolutely. It can just take years, though. It can take years. The programs that they set up, you know, are so effective that it can take years for their true colors to come out. But the thing about a narc is, the more they get away with it, the more they do it, and the worse it gets. And they eventually reach a point where they get themselves caught. And I believe that's how a lot of these, the companies that go down for the different fraud and things like that, it's because they didn't stop while they were ahead, because they can't. Narcissists are also very greedy. So once they've run a program and it worked, and they violated people and got away with it, they're going to keep doing it, because then it starts to develop a sense of invincibility. And in that pride that does precede a fall, they just keep going until they violate even laws that narcs have set up. Like, okay, now come on, you can't do this. Like, gee whiz, you know what I mean? You can't do this. So like they even reach a level that's not tolerable for even some of the worst narcs.
Does it run a bit like this as well? Like, I read this one book of this lady, I'm not going to, her name's Vendevelt, her second name, I can't remember her first name now, but she did Life Like a House. She said there's the basement, the first floor, the second floor, the third floor, then you get to the attic. So everybody in the basement, what's it like down there? Cold, dark, dingy. No one knows what's going on. Everybody's bumping into each other. No one can help each other. And it goes on. And then you get to the first floor, the second floor. You haven't sorted everything out, but you've understood what the problems are, even if you're starting or you haven't sorted them out. And you get to the attic, and it's a bit like there's a cobweb, and it says, I mean, you've got to be obviously quite spiritual, I think, and quite at ease with yourself to get that far. But it's a bit like you'll go, well, it's all right. I don't even need to clear that cobweb up because life will sort that out for me. Because you're unconditional now, and life's different. Do you think that a lot of these people, it's obviously they're living in the cold, dark, dingy dungeon. There's no light, no help, no one knows what they're doing, where they're going. Is that also what's going on then?
You mean the narcissists or the people who are affected by them?
Well, I think the ones that get affected by them personally feel like that. But I was talking about the narcissist people.
You know, I give that a lot of thought, you know, because well, actually, so I believe the answer to your question is, I believe they are in that basement, but it's a basement of their choosing. And I'll tell you why I believe that. There's one narc I know. There's absolutely nothing I can do to bring this person up to a higher level. And I feel a certain sense of obligation to do so, even though I shouldn't feel that. I do, because of who this person is. But what I mean is books. I've given books, articles, different movies that I'm like, ooh, if they see this, then it'll trigger this thought, and then they'll connect the dots, and then we can, you know, pull them out of this, you know. Nothing. Literally nothing has any impact there. And what kills me the most, though, is the books, the not wanting to read. And I get that we live in a society that doesn't really read anymore, or doesn't enjoy it like they used to, you know, but even in a digitized form, the answer is no. Sending YouTube videos, so I've given up now. I no longer carry that particular obligation, but it's sad because oftentimes this person will call and they're still running in the same mental loop. And I'm just sitting there thinking, I have tried so hard to get you out of this loop. I have tried to save you from yourself, to pull you out of the basement. I've literally tried everything that I know, because the truth of the matter is, like, you know, I think we're all in the basement to some extent until we start to get exposed to things. I feel like books have saved my life. Reading, just opening my mind up, just keeping those juices flowing have really kept me out of the basement. Because otherwise, if you never infuse your mind with new thoughts, you're going to keep running the same thought loops. And the thing about narcissists is they seem to be able to block out any new information that doesn't align with how they want to be, which is stuck. So it doesn't matter. You could send them the world's greatest teacher and they would have zero impact on them. So I think they live in the basement, but they want to be there, because you go and you say, hey, the door is open, come up to, you know, ground level with me. They won't do it. There's something about them that wants to be there, that holds them there. And it makes it really hard to feel sorry for them, especially when help has been extended. You know what I mean? Because at some point it seems like you're choosing this pathway versus it just happening to you. So like the fence walkers, those people who grew up really sheltered, never really had anything else to bounce their ideas off of, they finally get exposed. There are some that are like, oh, well, this is how I am and I'm not changing. And they cement themselves, those minds go reprobate, and that's who they are for the rest of their lives. Others will get exposed and really start to consider their actions maybe for the first time. And it's almost like their humanity gets flipped on, like their humanity switch gets hit for the first time. And they may not be perfect at it, but they take the time to really consider all of their actions, their choices, and they try to become better people. They might fall, excuse me, because of how, you know, it's very hard to break habits. And that's why they call them habits. So it's really hard to break out of doing something a certain way. But the type of person that you'd want to be around is the person who will at least pause and go, I really don't.
Is this something they've turned into? Is this something that's going on in their body then?
I think it cements. So what I think is, and again, this is just my personal opinion, I think that the mind, if it's not kept pliable, it cements, and it cements at an early age. It cements at like somewhere between the ages of 18 and 25 is when I know they say the personality is formed by 3, but I think it keeps going and it finally settles and cements somewhere in those 20s. And so to answer your question, yes, I do think it's something they become. And I think that fermentation gets worse over time. I think that the more it goes unchecked, the more it goes unchallenged, the more people that give up on them. And it's not saying that you shouldn't give up, because if you keep going, eventually you're going to drain yourself.
What do you think it's like for a narcissist when they get rejected?
Oh man. I think that's
hellfire will come down on you. I think
that principles drop explodes. Now you touch their tail. Oh man, when a narcissist gets rejected, it's so not pretty.
Or broken up with. If you break up with one, if you end it and get out first, watch out.
Because they didn't authorize that. So if anyone's going to do the dismissing, it's them. So the fact that you felt high enough to dismiss them, it triggers them in ways, because it's such an insult to them and their fragile ego. And once again, the narcissist decides when they're done with you. So it's very rare when you decide you're done and they're like, okay, and then they just go away. That's when you usually see them do the love bombing.
They can't leave you alone.
No, they can't. Not until they've decided they're through with you. So to them, and this stems from their entitlement, to them, you belong to them. Even if you're not married, whatever, if you're just a friend, you're their friend. You belong to them. They get to decide the terms of the relationship, and they decide when the relationship is over, not you. And that's what makes it so hard to get away from them. And that's why they flip-flop in between a really nice person and a really nasty narcissist, because and this goes back to me saying that they know they can't be that nasty narcissist all the time, because I think they figured it out enough to know that doesn't work for most people. That is not going to get me very far. So they flip-flop between this very kind person who pulls you back in, and then right when they have you where they want you, they go back to who they really are, because they can't keep up the act.
Yes, they reel you out, they reel you in, they reel you out, they reel you in.
Absolutely.
What about the children of narcissists? I feel very sad for any man or woman who is a narcissist, who, I don't feel sorry for them, but I feel sorry for their children who have to see their parent behaving like this, because it is an off and on kind of thing. They're always a narcissist, but they're not always exhibiting narcissistic qualities. Other times they can be loving and kind, although it's fake.
Right. My heart belongs to the children of narcissists, because I feel like until you're 18, you can't really do anything to free yourself. You can start working at 16, but no one's going to rent you an apartment. And a lot of places won't rent to people who aren't 21. So I feel like a lot of children of narcissists, bless their heart, because they're really stuck in a very bad situation. A lot of them are treated like objects and property. A lot of them already have tremendous expectations placed on them as the children of these people, and in the form of, the parent not being supportive of the child moving away, or not being supportive of the child studying whatever they want to study in school. And granted, there should be some guidance there, because some degrees are going to take us further than others. This is true. But what I mean is the total suppression of the person, the total suppression of that person's preferences, and this idea and obligation for the child to take care of the parent once they reach a certain age, or even before they reach that certain age, like your duty is toward me. It puts the child in a horrible spot, because we love our parents. Like, you kind of can't help it. It's kind of natural for the most part. And so you love this person, you think so highly of them, and then you wonder, well, they say they love me, but how could they treat me this way if they did? And then it's a cycle. So I really feel like the children of narcs get really messed up because you constantly run the cycle between what is happening to you and how you feel about this person, and the guilt that you feel for ever getting angry or frustrated with them for displaying their narcissistic tendencies. You feel guilty about that because then you start to go, well, but they've always taken care of me. They've always looked out for me. Not realizing that that's what parents are supposed to do. It's not like they found you on the side of the street and said, oh, look at this poor kid here. We'll take this one in and we'll dust him up and get him going. No, they made an active choice to give birth to a child. They're kind of supposed to take care of you until you are able to take care of yourself. So it's like a constant back and forth tug of war in your mind between the truth and the reality of your situation and then how you feel about them and how you want the situation to be.
Yeah, and then you probably find out in your mind that you probably weren't, and I'm not saying for everyone, by the way, but a lot of us, we weren't really looked after properly ourselves.
Absolutely. And it oftentimes children don't realize how badly they were neglected until they have kids themselves and they're better parents and they realize, wow, I didn't get any guidance at all. I wasn't properly looked after at all. And you don't realize it because you have nothing to compare it to, you see? And so it's often not until people become parents themselves that they realize what happened to them and they come to terms with it. I don't know if you guys heard, but
we switch everything off, don't we? Tomorrow is like a whole new, what do you call it? I would say world, but I'll say world. It's a whole new adventure, everything's an adventure every day. Maybe when you get to 1920 and that, all that starts changing because now the mundane is setting in. It's not an adventure as much as it was.
Right. It's not an adventure. I think we spend a lot of time making kids feel safe in the world, which we should. They should absolutely feel safe in the world and happy to be here.
You just think you grow up and then the child handled it much better than the adult.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, I feel so sorry for the children of narcissists, but I have seen some getting back lately. These brother and sister published a particularly biting obituary recently. This is the second one in a couple years where they just told the truth. And a lot of people were not happy about that because they said the mom wasn't there to defend herself anymore. And that could be debated, but the kids, they told their truth finally. After all these years, 40 something years, they finally told the truth about what happened to them in the obituary. And I just wish more people would tell the truth. Just tell the truth, because in not telling the truth about people, we just continue to hurt each other and continue to allow other people to hurt each other or hurt people. But we want to be nice. We want to be perceived as nice. And, we're not.
Yeah, because you treat people as you wish to be treated.
Right. So we just allow this to go on. And it's just reaching a breaking point now where it has to stop.
Hurt people. That is what I've heard. And it seems to be very true. We've all been hurt, but then there's a limit. A lot of us have been hurt where we don't hurt other people, but then there's people who've been deeply hurt. And those are the ones that hurt others.
And I think something else, absolutely. And I think something else we can do or start practicing as part of our walk in all this is being as consistent as the narcissist is. So it's like one of their things that they try to do is wear down your resistance to them. And my goal is to help you build that resistance up because they want you to go, oh my God, forget it. Just forget it. They want you to throw your hands up and just say, you win, you got it. Yeah, you're right. You're right. They want you to get frustrated. And one of the things that I intend is to teach people how to hold firm because the narcissist holds firm with ease. It's easy for them. It's not easy for us because we have that internal system that gets exhausted. So my goal is to double down and just say no for those narcs that you can't get away from. to not throw your hands up in frustration, to say, okay, well, if we're done talking about this for right now, we can pick up tomorrow, and then literally pick up tomorrow in the exact same place. For them to realize that you're not going to wear me down with your insanity. You know, I recognize your insanity and I can't get away from it. So we'll just deal with the rest of it tomorrow. And
you're saying all this, but what do people do when, you know, like you're in that position, but they don't leave you alone?
Oh, well, you know,
they may not be doing it directly, they're doing it indirectly, but they're doing things in public. How do you get around that when they won't stop?
Well, that's tough. That is tough because, you know, the first option always, if possible, is to get away from them and go no contact. I do recognize that that's not always an option for everybody. I think a person almost has to develop like a smart alecky, smart ass type attitude with them, which basically says, I don't care if you're going to sit here and act out in public. I'll act out with you. We'll just act out together. It's like a resoluteness that no matter what you do to me, I am not backing down. I'm not. Now, here's the danger in that. A lot of narcs, it's hard to gauge where a narcissist is on the scale, because a lot of them, when their simple tactics don't work, they will ramp it up. And sometimes that translates into domestic violence of different forms. Like, well, if she won't shut up, I'll make her shut up. Or if he won't shut up, I'll make him shut up. You know, I'll throw something at him. I'll, you know, hit her in the mouth, whatever. Because their goal is to win at all costs. And it's not that your goal is to win. Your goal is to not lose. And I don't know if that's as clear as I want it to be. Your goal is not to win. Your goal is to not lose. So again, they gain their power and they're able to keep going because we do back down, because we will back off the fight, because we won't press the issue, because we will just go ahead and concede, because concession is easier than to keep going around and around in circles with someone who's sort of kind of inexhaustible. They kind of have a long fuse. It's really hard to wear out a narcissist because I do think they're missing that vital internal.
They use everything, like we just said. If you're quiet, that's enough to make them argue. And if you make a noise or argue with them, then they love that. They can argue with you.
It's like, give me something to fight with. But my hope would be that after going a couple rounds and after realizing that you're dealing with a person who will stop at nothing to silence you, stop at nothing to break you down, stop at nothing to get you to let them have their way with you and your property or whatever without you saying anything. My hope would be that something internal would kick on and say, you know what? I'm worth more than this. I am worth more than someone who doesn't want me to speak. I'm worth more than someone who spends time trying to tear down my self-esteem, like will actually take the time out of their day to try to bring down my self-esteem. I'm worth more than this. I'm worth more than a person who will offer me kindness one day and complete coldness the next day. I'm worth more than that. I'm worth more than a person who wants to use me in a variety of different ways. I'm worth more than that. To hell with their trauma, their childhood trauma. We all have childhood trauma of some kind. So it's my hope is that once you start to realize how determined they are to take you down, it would kick up something inside to go, you know what? I'm worth more than this. I can do better than this. I don't deserve this. And they're not correct. Because I think there's a part of us sometimes that might think the narcissist is correct about us. And I'm here to tell you that they're not. They're completely incorrect. The only thing that they're correct about is how beautiful and confident and smart you actually are, which is why they want to tear you down. That's the only thing they're.
Yes, that is so well said. You were selected by the narcissist because you're an excellent human being, a good human being. They don't have your qualities, so they had to get you in order to mimic you. It's like what they say about the archons, if you believe in that sort of thing, or like David Icke, what he talks about. And I'm not sure if I'm totally into all that. It is an interesting concept that they themselves cannot create. They can only replicate. That's a narcissist.
Only replicate. Yes, I'm very familiar with that and that concept. They can only replicate. They cannot create on their own, which is why their lives are often just a replication of the day, because narcissists will often do it once. And if it's been done once and it worked out okay, that's good enough for them. And they'll never change up from that one time that it worked. So yes, all they can do is replicate. They cannot create. And they see the excellence in you. And that is the only thing that they're correct about, is that internal excellence. And they work overtime to try to convince you opposite.
Yeah, and then they want to cut it down.
They want to cut it, yeah, like a tall tree. It's like, that tree is just a little bit too tall. I'm going to cut it down and bring it down in size and show it that I'm the big woman or I'm the big man, not you. Even though that by virtue of them wanting to cut the tree down is stating that you are bigger than them. And I don't mean that in a superiority type of way. I just mean that in their desire to cut that tree down means that that tree must be really tall, if that makes any sense. And that's where I want people to pull their confidence from. It's like, this person is after you because you are displaying the characteristics of a tall tree. And for whatever reason, they either can't grow their tree or their tree is grown and they're just greedy. Who cares what the reason is, though? All we really need to know is that they want to chop your tree down. And we're going to prevent that from happening.
Yeah,
and
they're going to win.
Exactly. They want to win. Like, I won't even play board games with people who are psychotically competitive on a board game. Like, if you're crazy psycho nuts over Monopoly, I won't do. I'll just say, does anyone want my turn? Someone else can have my turn, because it's just not, it's not healthy to be that competitive. A healthy competition, sure. Fun competition, absolutely. Friendly competition between friends, great. But I have to win this Monopoly game to prove to myself that I'm better than you. Something is wrong with that. I had a narc friend many years ago who would actually say that. This is long before permission to exist, long before really the internet even came to be what it is, would actually say to me, oh, I got a Nokia last week and therefore I'm better than you. And she would say it like kind of jokey, but even at that young age, 16, 17, I was like, something is really wrong with this girl. Why? Who would say that? Oh, I got this and therefore I'm better than you. I'm like, okay. I didn't know we were competing. Like, but me in my not fragile, I wasn't fragile then. I was more just totally unaware. I just wrote it off as, okay, she's being really strange about that, but whatever, she's still my friend. Like, I was still willing to allow this person to be around me and be near me, even though she clearly was suffering from some sort of disorder. I should have felt far less safe than I actually did. For someone to call me up and be like, yeah, I got the Nokia last week and, you know, therefore I'm better than you. To actually use those words should have been a huge
way society is, though, a bit, though. They've got it so that we don't care about the people. We're only caring about the money and how much it costs and the new thing. And it's all to do with objects. So we don't care about the people anymore. We care about objects.
Absolutely.
People are objects now as well.
Absolutely. And an object can cause a sense of superiority. But I speak on my channel the dangers of jealousy and the dangers of envy. We don't take it into as much of account as we should. And it doesn't mean that we should hide who we are or block who we are or not be proud of our accomplishments. It means we need to be a little bit more aware. So a different friend, I've been completely surrounded by these people. I finally got them out of my life for the most part. There's a couple hanging on. But in my youth, I was completely surrounded and I had nobody coaching me through any of this. The only thing I had was like my internal guidance system to tell me something about this person isn't right. But no one was coaching me. So there was one friend, I was one of the only people in my group of friends to get a car first. And it wasn't there was nothing special about it. It was a car, it worked, it was functional, and it got me from point A to point B. And yes, my parents got it for me. I didn't realize at the time the impact that would have on my friends and the different things they did to my car being pranksters. So for example, one day a friend and I, this is a different girl, we're riding down the street at about 50 miles per hour. She out of nowhere throws my car in neutral, So we're driving, we're in motion. She throws my car in neutral. And I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? And I kick it back into drive. And I just look at her and she's just cracking up, just just cracking up. She thinks it's the funniest thing in the entire world. And I'm like, not only could you have killed us both just now, but you probably have damaged something internally on my car. Now, at this age and knowing what I know, what I realize is she just hated the car. She hated that I had it. She hated that my parents gave that to me. You know what I mean? So her thing was, well, let me try to destroy this since I don't have this and I can't have this. Separate friend. I had horrible friends. Separate friend. One day she gets in the car and I forget where we were going, but I had a bag of gummy worms in the car that had melted because it was so hot. She picks up the gummy worms, takes a huge scoop with her fingers and just drags it across the inside of one of my windows. And I look at her, I was like, what in the world are you doing? I'm sure I cursed. I'm sure I used some foul.
That's a weird thing to do.
I was like, what are you doing? Once again, just laughter. Ah, ha, 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 ha. So funny. Ha, ha, ha. And I think when I sold that car years later, there was still residue from those gummy worms because I couldn't get it off.
Oh.
And now, looking back, I'm just like, I consider that to be danger.
They hate you because they ain't you, really. That it comes down to that. They want to destroy you because they don't have what you have. It's so weird.
Absolutely. Like, it's sick. It's sick. And I hate that I didn't have anyone coaching me to say, you need to get away from those girls. They're not your friends. They don't like you. They're trying to destroy everything that you have in any way that they can figure out how to do it. You know what I mean? You're not safe around these people. So that was a very long tangent. I'm sorry. I don't know how I even got on.
Permission to exist. I'm not sure if Bling Bling's got a bit of a story that she could tell as well.
Bling Bling, you have a story? Are you still there?
Bling Bling. She was there just a minute ago. Bling,
I'm
Bling.
here.
There
I'm
she
here.
is.
Sorry. Had to unmute.
This is me.
Yeah, when you start talking about the women problems, that's when I really have a lot of stories, but one woman in particular, and that was stupid on my part, a good 20-year friendship because she was 10 years my junior, and I looked at her kind of like a little sister, and I was just trying to guide her along in her life, and I didn't see her histrionic personality develop as strongly as when she finally ended up finding someone that would marry her. And then she had children. And then the competitiveness started. And because my kids were so much older than hers, she started to bring up her parenting skills compared to what she perceived my parenting skills to be when my kids were little. I never judged her ever, and I never threw it in her face when she was just still that single girl, and she was coming, and I had to drag her twice out of, I don't know if you've ever heard of the biker gang, the Lost Bravos, but they're a huge Canadian biker gang, and they're criminals. They're very dangerous. And she was actually involved with one that was like second in command in the Winnipeg chapter. And I had to drive to that clubhouse and find her inside there and get her out of there twice. And she was all high on cocaine. And, I never, ever threw those things in her face. I was just really her friend. And she got married and started constantly doing the comparisons with, what she perceived to be her children being more advanced than what she remembered that mine were. And, I just went along, and I never really tried to say much back to her, because with a person like her, you could never have any kind of an argument or a debate about these things, because they immediately get their back in the air so high that it's an impossible moment with a person like that. And I mean, I have friends where I can have a discussion or even a disagreement and we'll get over it. But with her, if you have a disagreement, that you won't talk for 6 months to a year, because she can't handle it. You have to just go along with her and stroke her ego. And I finally got rid of her 2 years ago for the last time. And I will never revisit this friendship again. When for how many years I sat and listened to her marital breakup, where her husband had left her. And I knew her husband very well. In fact, I still communicate with him through Facebook today. Boy, goodness, if she knew that, she would have a bird. But she constantly was talking about this man and all of her hurts, and I was there for her, I was supporting her. And then there was one time that I needed her to be my friend, and it had something to do with my sons. And she said, I don't have time. I'm busy. I don't care about your kids. Wow. And yeah, that was like the last, for me, that moment where it was like, why are you involved in this? She was so competitive. She was so jealous. Whatever I was involved in, just like you were saying, Patricia, with their, the masks, all of a sudden she started to have to get involved in. Like, I've been involved in horses my entire life since I was 5. And all of a sudden, and, I spent a whole year with her, like helping her learn about horses. And it was really over the phone because I lived in Florida and she was in Winnipeg. And then she finally realized that she couldn't afford to do it, so she didn't do it. But there was such an attitude with her, like she had become more superior to the knowledge that I had given her, that somehow now she knew more than I did, was something that I've been doing my whole life, which was showing horses on a national level. And it was crazy that she'd send me videos and she'd start talking about, oh, look at this horse, and oh, look at his hip. She would just be parroting what I had said to her when I would tell her, in movement, look for the hip, look for the shoulder, look for the horse using itself with extension and, blah, blah. And then she'd be trying to school me, and it was obvious. And then she would get mad at me if I would say, Michelle, that's fine. I know all that. I see that. Well, I'm just trying to school you, she would say. But Margaret, the friend that lives with me, really noticed, what was happening with this woman, and how upset I was. Like, I was so upset so much of the time having to deal with this woman who was so intrusive in my life. And it was constantly on the phone with her. We'd have 12-hour phone conversations where it was talking all about her and her life and her boyfriends and her appearance, and spend time on Plenty of Fish looking for men to date. And then she found one in Florida, and then she came to visit me, and then she ditched me so she could spend time with this guy. And then she found out that he had a living girlfriend, and then she ended up coming to my house, and I took her on a vacation with us to Maine, like just so spontaneously, because again, I'm a real friend, and all she is a fake Klingon. I think we've all had friends like this. Bella, stop. I'm sorry, my little dog is barking. But it's just, when you finally let go, what a liberating experience. I finally feel so free. I don't have any toxic friendships left in my life. There were others along the way, but nothing to this level of true histrionic, which is like, they have such a strong need to be the center of attention. They have to be the center of attention, no matter where it is, even if it's negative. Like when we brought her to Maine and I took her to my in-laws, and for the Labor Day long weekend, she just would sit and phone her mother the whole time and yelling on the phone and swearing at her, where everyone in my family could hear her. Yet she was, I'm sure, inside happy knowing that they could hear her, because again, she was getting indirect attention from their listening ears. Mm-hmm. And she would call you out on things in her own family. Like her mother would say to me, oh, so you're really into horses, Christine, and that's really great. And then Michelle would look at her mother and say something like, Mom, you've never liked horses. Like, she would humiliate you and embarrass you, again, so she could be the center of attention. Or her mother had me for dinner a few times, and she would offer me something extra, and Michelle would say, you never offered me that, Mother. It was just the worst possible friendship. And can you imagine 20 years of this woman in my life dealing with this all the time, where I finally had enough and I really ended it. And I found out through her ex-husband, and I don't speak negatively about her to him. I still care about her. It's not like I just hate the woman now, but I certainly can't have a friendship with her. It's impossible. But he said that I was her only friend. And he knew for sure because he lived with her. They were married for 17 years. And he confirmed to me that I was really her only friend. And now she doesn't have me. It's so sad listening to the way her children speak to her. Again, it's a cycle. Listening to her kids calling her an effing C. I thought my ears were going to fall off. Her young children, who were like, the oldest is 13, calling her that, full out the whole words, totally out of control, terrible parenting. Yet all the things that, she was saying that I didn't do right. She was doing all of these things, which my kids never spoke to me like that and still haven't to this day, that kind of language. And they were raised differently, with God and for one thing, Jesus is part of their lives. She rejected that when I suggested it, So it's not just the men, narcissistic relationships. I've had the bosses,
Mm-hmm.
I had a boss say to me once, "Oh," because I just came out of the bathroom and I'd washed my hands and my pants got wet against the sink. And he said, "Oh, you're wet. Are you happy to see me?"
Oh.
Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. And the boss that was over top of him, he once yelled at me so loud. I was the recruiter trainer for a huge company. He yelled at me so loud once and scared me so bad that I urinated myself right there while I was standing. The intimidation factor, they were both narcissists, both of those bosses. So I've had those things, but luckily I was able to, leave Canada when we left Montreal and never had to work for people like that again. But you can choose at least your friends. Yeah, sure.
We were talking a bit about children, right? And Permission to Exist was saying how sad she feels for the children of narcissists. But if we could just even have an hour a week at the school so that they can tell children about making friendships, communicating and being nice to each other, do you think we might be able to change things?
I don't think that is strong enough. By the time the child's 8 years old, they're 80% programmed in their personality. So if they're having all that, at 8 years old, it's such a young age and you're 80% programmed. So they don't have a lot of chance, sadly, when that type of parenting is just thrust upon them. And that's all they see every day is that kind of interaction between the parents. And I would hear it. I'd be on the phone with her and I would hear what was happening between her and her husband. And then when they finally did split up, all she would do is bash him in front of those kids. And I keep saying, please don't do that. As much as you can't stand him right now, he's still their father, will always be their father. And one day you may work things out where you can be friends and have a working relationship together, raising up these boys. Don't poison their minds, but she wouldn't pay any attention. And now it's rebounded on her. Well, now they hate her. And I heard it. Like I said, I heard the way he spoke to her. The husband has confirmed, the ex-husband's confirmed it to me. When we're sending each other messages, he's told me how the kids are treating her. And they're like now almost 16 years old, the oldest. I can only imagine it could get violent in that house.
And hopefully they won't become narcissists, although, we don't really know what causes narcissism, but
they definitely, the nurture that you either receive or don't receive is definitely going to cause some kind of a personality disorder. They say that if you're left crying in the crib for half an hour, you're going to have something wrong with you when you grow up. We are that fragile and delicate as we grow, as we're babies and children. People don't realize that childhood is such a short, little, tiny part of a human, and it's the most important part of our formation.
Yeah, it's when we're being knit together, our body and our mind.
All the neurons and all the pathways to the brain, everything's being formed, and if that's what you're putting into your child, there's no question it's going to come out very negatively. And unless it's a really strong child that has a strong sense of natural empathy, like I saw one of those children had that. It was a very soft, sweet child, The other one you could see was a totally different, just right from birth, as they just started to get a little bit bigger. There was a difference in their natural personalities, but the older one is completely crazy, out of control. And maybe the younger one might have a chance. But parents, you know, if you can't handle your kids, you need help. There's so many avenues and pathways for parents these days that are even free, that to not take advantage of it is such a disservice to your child. Because once they're formed, that's it, they're formed. And it's a whole lifetime of trying to heal from things, you know, questioning ourselves. Why am I like this? Why am I like this? How many times as a woman that has been damaged from a broken childhood, question why we are the way we are? You know, half the time our lives are spent thinking about these things. And for me, they certainly were, with what I went through. And when I finally heal from it, it's an amazing thing. I don't feel the need to even have to even talk about it anymore. And that's all I did for years, is talk about my incestual childhood that I had. I mean, that it possessed my whole life. And now I'm so healed from it, and it's such a peaceful feeling. But when a child is damaged, either what I went through or having a parent that is, you know, like a histrionic personality, which I think is worse than a narcissist. You know, if you look up how they are, you know, I mean, they even are combative and competitive to their own children. I mean, you couldn't run a foot race with her kids. She'd have to beat them and then be happy about it. She wouldn't fake, you know, like not running fast enough to build up their own self-esteem by them winning the race. She would never do that. Like, a histrionic woman cannot ever let someone else have the limelight. They have to have it on them all the time. And like I said, even if it's negative, even if people don't like what they're hearing. I saw her flirt openly with my sister-in-law's husband.
I hear histrionics lead with sex oftentimes.
Oh, she was so provocative. It was gross and disgusting to me. I was so embarrassed that I brought her. I never, ever thought that she'd ever behave this way. But the way she flirted with my sister-in-law's husband. And, you know, he was drunk. So, you know, I mean, there's no excuses, right? But he was that much worse because of it. But she was sober and she was acting this way. And I had to pull her aside and say, look, you need to stop this because you're upsetting people here. You know, you need to stop fighting with your mother on the phone, because people they don't want to hear it. You're upsetting them. And
Bling.
Of course.
Can I ask permission to exist? What Bling's been talking about with this person, is there any way, like, you have sort of covered it, but is there any, like, do they ever wake up? Or is it that this motive they've got about, well, it's a very selfish motive, isn't it? Because no one else exists. Is that the most important thing? They just don't see the rest? Or can they wake up?
You know, honestly, I personally don't think they wake up until they experience severe consequences. So some consequences we would consider severe. They don't necessarily consider severe. I don't think they wake up until much, much later. But if I were being perfectly honest, 100% honest with you, I don't think they ever wake up. I don't. I think that
they can't. I mean,
I don't think they do either.
It's in their neurotransmitters.
Yeah,
like
the
I was
only
saying,
thing that'll
like,
straighten them out is the grave. Really, that's it.
That's sad. But it's like, it's right. It's proven scientifically that it's actually a part of the way their brain has been formed now. And I know her childhood. I know she was kicked out of the house, you know, at 15 years old, and she always felt that her brother was favored, and he probably was. And, you know, but yet I saw her mother coming with bags and bags of groceries and still doing very kind things for her. Yet she always rejected everything kind that her mother ever did, which was constant right throughout until the day she died.
That's a really good point.
Which was several years ago.
Mission to exist. They don't want you being kind to them.
Yeah. She
very well.
She just wanted to be very mean to her mother, and that's the relationship that she had with her. And her mother was dying of cancer, and she was still so mean to her. It was so heartbreaking. And I was very involved at that point. You know, I was going back and forth to Winnipeg because I mean, I knew her mother actually longer than I knew this girl, because an old job I had, I used to call on grocery stores, and her mother was a manager of a grocery store. So that's how I got to know her. It was funny that ended up, you know, being friends with Michelle. And then one day we're talking and she tells me who her mother is. And I'm like, wait a minute, I know your mom. And it was just like a small world, you know. But and that's when I first witnessed how she treated her mother with such contempt, with such anger, with no gratitude. Her mother cooked meals right until the day she died, pretty much going over, bringing food all cooked for her and her kids, especially when the husband left, you know, and then it was all dried up and gone. She has nobody now. She has nothing, nobody left in her life. She pushes them all away. You know, they can't have they're an attention seeking. They're so emotionally charged. Everything's exaggerated, theatrical. You know, it's like such a drama. You know, you talk about drama queens. Like this is what these people are. You know, they make rash decisions. They never think things over. They have no tolerance for any kind of frustration. And especially if you get into something with them, if you try to call them out on something, they're not going to be able to have any type of a fight with you, which is a fair argument. You know, it's not going to happen. They won't listen to your side. No.
Never going to be fair. Can I just ask something? We have been going for quite a long time now. We haven't heard from Roxanne today. I don't mean to cut you off there, Bling Bling, because it's a horrible story. I think you've worked it out quite a lot. I think.
Oh yeah, you just ditch them. You finally just end it and walk away and feel really good about knowing you did everything you could to help that person, but they will never, ever, ever change. And like Patricia said, it's a terrible way to say it, but it's the only truth there is.
I agree.
But yeah, Roxanne's there. If Roxanne's got anything to say, Roxanne, are you there?
I am here, my darling. Sorry, I'm here. Yep.
Yeah, you've been really quiet. You've been listening.
I'm sorry, I have. I've been listening in. It's just been really, really insightful to listen to. I feel like my conscious is expanded somewhat throughout this hangout.
Oh, that's good.
It really has. And full ratings to everybody that's been here. I feel really, I don't know, not for the want of the better word, I feel like I'm restricted with the language, to be honest with you, but I really feel proud to be a part of this tonight. And Karen, I really want to, give you full ratings to giving this platform tonight to talk about these things. I feel like these things aren't discussed enough in public. I think, we as women, we do have to stand up for ourselves, and we do have to defend the things that we've gone through. For our own character, the amount of times I've witnessed defamation of character going on casually in broad daylight, and people witness it and say nothing and allow it to happen. And when you defend yourself, you're considered a dramatic person. And I think that has to stop in society. I think when someone's been wronged by someone, they have to be allowed to speak up for themselves. And I think that's what we're getting to do here, speak up for ourselves and maybe, like I'm saying, expand our conscious with regards to what we're dealing with. Instead of talking for hours about the problem, I've witnessed talking for hours about the solutions to it, which is pretty profound as far as what I've seen on Hangouts thus far. So yeah, I'm really proud to be a part of it, Karen. And big love and hugs and kisses to all the you girls on there.
Part of it, aren't we?
It's almost like ladies' night, impromptu ladies' night again, isn't it?
Yeah, someone said that in the chat.
Feeling the love. I'm feeling the love.
It wasn't meant to just be an all ladies panel, but
it turned out that way, and it's been lovely. It's been lovely.
Yeah, everybody on here has been bullied or picked on, or the narcissist side of things. So yeah, we all
and we've all seen each other live on YouTube have it happen to each other too. Yeah. It's not just in our private life. We've seen it.
And it's happened in the public domain. And I think that's the major thing that resonates here. It's, we've all come from different walks of life. We've all come from different places across the international flat plane of existence. And here we are today having this public conversation about it. And instead of having these conversations in private and keeping them underneath the table, so to speak, we've got them out here in the open for everybody to see. And I think that's what's important.
And we've not named any names, so therefore no
Well said,
narcissist will
Patricia.
be getting any
Yeah.
energy off of this.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
just to
And
interject
that's
on
what's
that.
important, because I feel if we do that, and there is no battle or war to win, but I feel that if we start going down that road, then I feel we lose the point we're trying to make.
Do you know, I forgot that this person, she does stalk me. And when she found out that I was flat earth, she really went hysterical over it with trying to turn some of my Facebook friends against me. But I'm pretty sure because she'll see my name in the Sun and Moon Family United's just video description, she will watch it. And I'm kind of happy about that, you know.
They'll watch. They'll leave a thumbs down, but it doesn't matter.
You know, I told this story truthfully. There's a lot I left out, you know, so I'm kind of glad that they're going to listen to it because it's the truth. And
well, they won't
they just
recognize
get to hear
it's the truth about them. However, other people
Oh.
will recognize it's the truth about them. And the more people who recognize, the sooner it can stop.
What's funny is she's going to know now that I'm friends with her husband and we send messages back and forth. That part makes me laugh.
Can I just ask, is our Patricia there? I don't know if she's, you know, she's had some internet problems.
I'm
she's
here.
there.
I'm here.
Do you want to say anything? You've been very quiet.
Not really, but just want to thank everybody for coming and permission to exist. It's been absolutely wonderful listening to you. I just there's so much that we all need to learn, and you know, to put these people in their place, so to speak. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's totally the goal. And I just do want to make very clear here at the end that it does affect men and women. I know we talked about men a lot earlier, but I definitely want to make clear that this is something that affects men and women. And I think I've had more run-ins with female narcs probably than men. But, you know, it's definitely not a competition or a race, but it definitely affects everyone. So I hope I didn't isolate or alienate any of your viewers with that conversation. But, you know, just bringing out the different things. And I also want to say, in regard to the backlash that you all receive for being the kind of group that you are and holding the beliefs that you do, I've always found it interesting how angry Globers get regarding this conversation. And to me, it goes back to narcissism in this way, which is this: why don't we have a right to believe what we want to believe? We've done our research, we've come to certain conclusions, but it's almost like these individuals, it's like you are not allowed to think that. You have to think what I think, or else something's wrong with you. You're worthy of scorn, you're worthy of name calling, you're worthy of threats and all this kind of stuff just because you hold a separate belief. So that's kind of, you see what I mean? Narcissism peeks its head out everywhere. Do you see what I mean? Where you're attacked for you're attacked for thinking differently, for going against the group. And so my goal is to make it to where we can think, we have permission to exist. I can exist. I have my thoughts and my beliefs. You know what I mean? I can have dialogue with another person who thinks differently without destroying them and without trying to rip up everything that they are just because they hold a separate belief. So it peeks its head out there as well. It's everywhere. I need to make that video. I keep saying I'm going to make, and I will eventually, but I want to just tell you guys to hang in there, stand firm, you know, fight the good fight. You know, I know it's hard in the internet forum. I get it too. You know what I mean? Just, it really brings out some of the most disturbed people that you could possibly imagine. So hang in there, because the last thing we want to do is to start scaling back and crawling back into our holes and letting this disorder thrive. So.
Well said. Thank you for coming on.
Can I just quickly say something? Sorry.
Sure.
This is what I love about this group. We know there's people with differences, but we also embrace them differences, and we're trying to bring people together, you know. And also, as a narcissistic person, it's good that they show their true colours, because otherwise, if they all went underground, we'd never know. So it's good that they're showing the true colours, and we can spot them. Maybe not a mile away, but we're beginning to spot these people and do whatever we need to do to put them in the place, like I said earlier, sorry. And sorry, I know I'm waffling, but just to say my comment earlier about who'd want to touch an narcissistic tail, it was supposed to be more of a sexual connotation than a male, only males are narcissistic. It wasn't that at all. But anyway, I just want to apologise for that if I upset anybody. But
no, I understood you totally, Patricia. I got it.
For sure.
I just love this group. And thank you so much, Permission to Exist, for coming along and giving us so much information. So thank you to everybody. And I love you all, by the way.
You're so welcome. And I love you guys.
Thank you so much for coming. Does Patricia Steere want to say anything?
I know. I just want to thank you, Karen, for having the idea to have Permission to Exist on.
It was Patricia's.
It's so awesome to know, even if it's on the down low, that there is somebody involved in revealing narcissists and fleshing them out who's also a flat earther. So
Yeah, well said, Patricia. Well said.
Absolutely. I'll drop a link to the page. Let me pull it up real quick so you guys can check it out. There's tons of videos there.
Maybe you'll come back on Sun and Moon again in the future.
I would love to. I really enjoyed myself. This is my first time doing it. So I'm super excited and so honored. Thank you so much for inviting me.
We say goodbye publicly, but we say goodbye off air. So if we just say goodbye to everybody in the chat room, and thank you everybody for listening in the chat room, and then we'll just say goodbye off air. So to everybody, chat room, it is goodbye, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, good morning to you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bling Bling. Thank you, Roxanne. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Patricia Steere. And thank you, Permission to Exist.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. And everyone in the chat, remember, these are our personal opinions, all right? And we are allowed to have them. So if you were offended by anything that we said, please don't take it personally.
Yeah.
This is based off of our own experiences and our own lives. And if you've had a different experience in your own life, then that's your experience. But this is what we have lived through.
And to any of our stalkers out there who happen to be narcissists, hi.
You've been
Well said. I'll drink to that.
So exciting. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Mwah.
Goodbye. Big hugs.
Big hugs.